Chapter 193. Compensation. If he had not cultivated both the water god technique and the fire god technique at the same time, he would not have been able to activate the power of yin and yang. This was because the water god technique and the fire god technique were the power of yin and yang in the five elements. However, there was no effect in cultivating either one. Only by cultivating both could the power of yin and yang be activated. This unexpected turn of events made Qin Feng grin from ear to ear. First, it was the divine dragon technique, then the yin-yang integration matrix, then the fire god technique, and now the yin-yang technique. Who else had gained more from this trip to the sacred dragon realm than him? Although he did not really understand the cultivation of the yin-yang technique, it was only a matter of time. Once he understood the yin-yang technique, it would be a powerful trump card for him. Thinking of this, Qin Feng could not help but laugh. He had thought that killing the divine envoy would be a futile effort. Who would have thought that such a change would occur? Compared to them, on the divine bestowment general platform, his opportunity was probably the greatest. At this moment, he was incomparably happy, especially when he heard those screams. The psychic true flames were a terrifying ordeal to them, but to him who had cultivated the fire god technique, it was no different from a heavenly nourishment. In the psychic true flames, his cultivation of the fire god technique was also progressively improving. If I can get my hands on the psychic true flames, will I be able to refine some yang qi and activate the power of yang? Qin Feng suddenly had an idea as he looked at the flames in the sky. Finally, he took action and searched for the psychic true flames. In the flames, he also saw the others. They were all enduring the pain of being burned, and their faces were all twisted. "Little cutie you, why are you fine?" Mo Feng saw Qin Feng and was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. Although Qin Feng had cultivated the strongest bone, the pain of being burned by the psychic true flames was no less than theirs. "They know that I've already forged the strongest bone and know that it's useless to me, so they didn't burn me." Qin Feng laughed happily. Previously, Mo Feng had often mocked him for working for nothing. "Not you." Mo Feng's mouth twitched. He was so angry that his liver hurt. He could not be bothered to talk nonsense with Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled and walked away. "Damn, little cutie." Flower Demon's expression was even more exaggerated than Wind Void's. Qin Feng could even see a lot of resentment in her eyes. "How did I offend her again? Why am I in so much pain? But you're fine. I didn't see you being burned so miserably. I hate you so much." The Flower Demon beat her chest and stomped her feet, followed by a few more miserable screams. Qin Feng was speechless. It wasn't that Demon Queen Hua couldn't bear to see him do well, but she just wanted to see him be plagued by bad things. Qin Feng walked over and formed a big hand with his spiritual energy. He lifted the Flower Demon's hands above her head, outlining her beautiful figure. However, Qin Feng didn't have time to look at this. He swung his palm and slapped the Flower Demon's tender arm. And it wasn't just a single slap. His arm was like a wind blade that spun at high speed. Pa 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 sounds rang out continuously. In terms of strength, the Flower Demon couldn't be compared to Qin Feng. Adding on the fact that she was being burned by the spiritual true flames, she didn't have the slightest ability to resist. She could only hang there, her tender arm burning with pain. "Little cutie, just you wait." The Flower Demon shouted, her cheeks flushed red. Being spanked in this position, it was too embarrassing. "You still dare to threaten me?" Qin Feng glared and pressed Hua Xiaoyao to the ground without any explanation. A pair of large hands pressed down on her. "Little cutie, what are you trying to do?" The Flower Demon arched her body as if she had been electrocuted, looking at Qin Feng in fear. "With your washboard body, I'm not interested." Qin Feng curled his lips and searched the Qinquan bag on her body, taking out all the things inside at once. What clear sky gourd, golden net, spirit talisman. Everything inside. Qin Feng didn't care if they could be used or not. He took them all away. "This is your punishment for being disrespectful to me." Qin Feng took away all these things and left without looking back. "Bastard, stop right there." Seeing that Qin Feng was about to disappear, the Flower Demon shouted in fear. "Lord Qin Feng, please give me my clothes. Qin Feng turned his head and looked at the flower demon, who was surrounded by flames. Only then did he understand that with such a strong flame, nothing would be left behind after being burned. You're really not particular. How could you put your clothes together with your treasures? Your private life is too messy. Qin Feng searched for a long time before he took out the flower demon's clothes and put them in her chinquin bag to prevent them from being burned. However, he reluctantly accepted the hairpins, bracelets, necklaces, earrings, etc. These were all made with special materials and had a certain amount of defensive power. What are you doing here? The flower demon ground her small canine teeth and said, Of course I'm thinking of a way to get the spiritual true flame. If I can't get other opportunities, then I have to take the flame. Hearing this, the flower demon was stunned and then burst out laughing. Qin Feng looked at her and asked, What do you mean? Nothing, you can continue looking. I'm here to wish you success. That's not right. Qin Feng looked at the flower demon and was puzzled. Why was the great flower demon so kind? He walked over and took her chinquin bag and threatened, Tell me the truth, or I'll take away all your clothes. You. The flower demon was so angry that her face turned red. Also, don't try to lie to me. I'll go back to other people to verify. If there's a single lie, you can forget about keeping your clothes. Once you get them, you'll appear naked in front of everyone. Seeing the smile on Qin Feng's face, she shuddered and quickly said, The spiritual true flame is one with the divine bestowment guard platform. You can't find it, nor can you take it away. Really? If you don't believe me, you can ask other people. Seeing that the flower demon didn't seem to be lying, Qin Feng couldn't help but feel regretful. Quick, I'm going to make it. Give me my clothes. Also, hurry and leave. The flower demon suddenly said loudly. Seeing the flames on the flower demon's body gradually disappear, revealing a large area of snow white, Qin Feng didn't want to humiliate her in this aspect. He threw down the chinquin bag and quickly left. The flames in the surroundings gradually weakened. Clearly, many people were about to succeed. A few minutes later, the spiritual true flame disappeared, and the divine bestowment guard platform returned to its original state. Everyone was revealed, and Qin Feng could feel that many people's auras had greatly increased. AI, what a pity. Although I'm about to break through, I didn't cultivate the strongest bone. You Huatian sighed. You failed? Qin Feng asked. You can't say that. His root bone has strengthened a lot, and he can enter the spiritual detection realm at any time. Zhou Yin shook his head. Compared to Yu Huatian, he was smiling a lot. Clearly, he had succeeded. AI, I'll break through here. I don't want to stay in this sad place. Yu Huatian sighed and stopped suppressing his cultivation. At the same time, some people also planned to break through. Although they didn't cultivate the strongest bone, they found the opportunity to break through. Wait a minute. Qin Feng shouted and said to everyone, You said before that you would compensate me. I worked so hard, but I didn't get anything. Instead, I gave you opportunities. You have to compensate me. Qin Feng didn't blush and went against his conscience. I need the 100-spirit mushroom, blood-severing grass, heaven-replenishing muscle-melting ointment. He listed out the 10 main ingredients for the regeneration pill and asked everyone to help him gather them. Moreover, there was no limit to the amount. Chapter 194. Continue to expand. As for Qin Feng's compensation, no one had any objections. Although these medicinal herbs were precious, they did not forget that without Qin Feng, they would not have this good fortune. And the result of him risking his life was to be burned, so it was only right for him to ask for some compensation, and they should give it to him. Brother Qin Feng, don't worry. Everyone will do their best to gather the herbs you mentioned, Zhou Yin said. Rumble. Beams of light shot up into the sky, and then the people in the beams of light disappeared. Qin Feng took a rough look and was speechless. There were more than a dozen people, which meant that more than a dozen people had broken through to the spirit detecting realm. And this was only a portion because Tang Ke, Zhou Yin, Mo Feng, and the others were still there. From their expressions, it was not hard to see that they had all forged the strongest bones. Aren't you guys going to break through? Qin Feng asked. Mo Feng, Gong Xiaoxi, Tang Ran and the others had already reached the great circle of bone strengthening. They still needed some time to settle down before they could break through. However, Tang Ke and Zhou Yin had already been in this realm for many years. Even Yu Huatian and the others had broken through. Qin Feng did not believe that these two could not. We need to properly comprehend the power of the strongest bone. Only by breaking through like this can we reach the strongest spirit-detecting realm, Zhou Yin said. Actually, he could break through, but he wanted to properly comprehend the strongest bone. Qin Feng nodded inwardly. He could foresee how terrifying the two of them would be once they gained sentience. The strength of a root bone was directly related to the strength of the later stages. Otherwise, why would the strengthened bone realm be so important? And why would the progress of this stage be so slow? That was because this was a strengthening of the bones, a different type of foundation building. In the future, it would have a crucial effect on one's body. Mo Feng and the other Sky Palace's disciples had also forged the strongest bones. Qin Feng was not surprised by this. The strongest bones were not something that could be forged with strength alone. It was related to one's talent, potential, and the nurturing they received from a young age. This was also why they were disciples of the Heavenly Palace, while the others were only in the Heaven Stage class. Only the Flower Demon glared at him from time to time, as if she was constipated. Qin Feng ignored him and said, "The trip to the Sacred Dragon Realm should be over soon." "That's right. It's time for us to head back." The way to return was also very simple. It was to throw their respective Holy Dragon tokens onto the mark left behind by the God's emissary after the God's bestowment platform disappeared. As the Supreme Holy Dragon Medallion was absorbed, a dazzling light erupted in the area, and everyone was sucked in. When Qin Feng opened his eyes again, he appeared in the place before the holy light shrouded him. He had returned to Tu Tianhui's territory. Not long after, Hong Yayu and the others who had entered the Sacred Dragon Realm came over. They looked both happy and helpless. Clearly, some had gained something while others had not. "Qin Feng, what happened in the Sacred Dragon Realm?" Hong Yayu asked. Not everyone knew about the Divine Bestowment General Platform. Some people might have used the Sacred Dragon Medallion to leave when they encountered danger. There were also people who sensed the terror of the Divine Envoy midway and did not dare to approach. Generally speaking, most of the people who had entered the Divine Bestowment General Platform were true experts, and most of them were from the Heaven class. After all, the students were of different levels, and not everyone knew about the existence of the Divine Bestowment General Platform. Qin Feng was only vague about this. He smiled bitterly and said, "I might not be able to stay here for long." "What? Feng Ge, you're going to be expelled from the St. Ryuan?" Everyone was shocked. Hong Yayu was also shocked. Tu Tianhui was still developing, and Qin Feng was the backbone of Tu Tianhui. If he was not around, it was hard to say whether Tu Tianhui would still be as united as it was now. "Speak. What immoral things have you done that the Academy wants to expel you?" Hong Yayu said angrily. She knew that problematic students could cause big trouble wherever they went. "Feng Ge, what bad things have you done? The Academy will definitely not tolerate being expelled. That shouldn't be the case. Even if Feng Ge went on a killing spree in there, he wouldn't have really killed anyone. Could it be that the fluctuations from before were caused by Feng Ge and caused casualties?" Qin Feng was speechless. Was he such a bad person in the eyes of this group of people? Couldn't they think in a positive direction when something happened? He shook his head helplessly and said, "What I mean is, I reckon that it won't be long before I'm transferred back to the Heavenly Hall again." Everyone was surprised, and Hong Yayu was the first to react. "Your problem was solved inside?" Qin Feng nodded, putting aside the fact that his body had recovered. Just the fact that he had caused such a big commotion inside would definitely be known by the higher-ups when he came out. Moreover, he and Gong Xiaoxi had practiced the yin-yang integrated formation together. Just based on this alone, Ying Yuan would drag him back no matter what. When everyone heard this, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Their boss had recovered his status as a disciple of the Heavenly Hall. This was a good thing, and it would be of great help to Tu Tianhui's development. However, in this way, he would be away from Tu Tianhui for a long time, and sooner or later, he would be unfamiliar with them. Qin Feng knew what everyone was thinking. He smiled and said, "Everyone, don't worry. Tu Tianhui was founded by me, and I definitely won't let it disband. Sukai, our forces need to continue expanding." Everyone had not yet recovered from the emotions of Qin Feng's departure, but when they heard this, they were all stunned. Sukai was also dumbfounded. This master was about to leave, and he was still thinking about expanding his forces. No, how would he expand? Fengge, the 4 major districts of the Profound class are under our control. Where are we going to expand our forces? Sukai asked. This was also the doubt of everyone, and everyone looked at him. Qin Feng smiled slightly. Tu Tianhui's development could not be limited to the Profound class. In the near future, I plan to develop towards the Earth class, or even the Heaven class. Everyone was dumbfounded, and they were shocked by Qin Feng's crazy actions. That's impossible. Sukai shook his head and said, "Not to mention the Heaven class, even the Earth class looks down on us. How can we develop there?" That was in the past. Now, the Profound class and the current Tu Tianhui is not something that anyone or any sect can look down on. Qin Feng looked at everyone and said in a deep voice, "I will recover my status as a disciple of the Heavenly Hall." With just this title, who would dare to look down on Tu Tianhui? Not only do I want the Profound class, but I also want the Earth class, Heaven class, and even the entire student body. I want Tu Tianhui to become the #1 association among the St. Ryuin students. The Tang sect, the Beauty Gang, and the Crazy Word Society will all have to submit. Hearing Qin Feng's words, everyone could not help but feel their blood boil, and a fighting spirit surged in their chests. Such a crazy thing. Even if it did not succeed, it would still be a beautiful story in the future. Fengge, whatever you say, we will do. Sukai was the first to speak. We will all follow Fengge. The others said loudly, their blood boiling. Qin Feng smiled, paused for a moment, and said, "I am currently the 3rd leader of the Crazy Word Society. This identity will bring us a lot of convenience, and maybe the Beauty Gang will secretly help us when the time comes. But this matter can be big or small. We need a detailed plan." Qin Feng said to Sukai, "You take the people of the Master Hall and come up with the best feasible plan for me in 3 days." Chapter 195. Regeneration Pill in hand. Qin Feng had already thought of Tu Tianhui's expansion plan when he was still in the Holy Dragon Realm. Previously, he had only been a disciple of the Profound class, so he had not thought so much about it. However, things are different now. He would return to his status as a disciple of the Heavenly Hall. Since that was the case, Tu Tianhui's development would not be limited to the Profound class. This identity, as well as the fact that everyone owed him a favor on the Divine General Bestowment platform, was very helpful to Tu Tianhui's expansion. In the past, when he first came here, he only wanted to live a peaceful life and not be remembered by others, so he developed Tu Tianhui. Later, due to many reasons, he had no choice but to expand his influence. But in the end, he had always treated himself as an outsider because he would leave sooner or later. Expanding his influence outside the academy was only to leave a good home for those who had fought alongside him. After all, once Tu Tianhui developed to a certain extent and the St. Ryuin higher-ups felt that they were useful, they would secretly support them. Once a person had something that they could use, they would not be easily abandoned. This might not sound nice, but in this cruel world, if you did not even have the ability to be used by others, who would care about you? However, as his forces continued to grow, his thinking also changed. If he had the ability, the opportunity, and a very good foundation and convenient conditions for development, why not use it? He had to leave sooner or later. Tu Tianhui wasn't of much help to him. However, if one day Tu Tianhui developed to a certain extent, it could help other people outside. It could even develop to the City of Sin in the future and take care of his family in secret. This was the most important thing. For Qin Feng, his biggest weakness was his family. If Tu Tianhui grew stronger, he could secretly take care of the City of Sin and protect his family. This way, he could leave with peace of mind. In the past, he had been forced by the situation and had no choice but to develop. But now, he was taking the initiative. He truly wanted to make Tu Tianhui stronger and bigger. After dismissing everyone, Qin Feng asked Hong Yayu to stay. He poured a cup of tea and handed it to her, asking, "Do you still want to stay in the profound class? In order to find out the truth behind your brother's death, Tu Tianhui has the capital to talk to the Dragon Head religion, so it doesn't matter if you're here or not." Hearing this, Hong Yayu shook his head and said, "I don't really care about cultivation, and I'm already very familiar with this place. I don't want to go anywhere else. Besides, if you and I both leave, people's hearts will scatter. I have to help you lead Tu Tianhui." Qin Feng was stunned. He immediately laughed bitterly. He did not want to force Hong Yayu. Everyone had their own plans. "By the way, how is Duan Hong doing?" he asked. After thinking for a while, Hong Yayu said, "It should be going well. There's no news that he needs help." Qin Feng nodded slightly. It should be going well. After all, Duan Hong had many strong Bone Realm masters by his side. This strength was not considered strong in St. Ruin, but outside, in the primitive land that was badly suppressed by the imperial capital, this force was not weak. It should be known that in the City of Sin, strong Bone Realm masters, especially those in the late stage, were definitely top masters. This was because in the entire City of Sin, only Ouyang Qingtian was in the spirit detecting realm. Thinking of this, he could not help but think of his father, Qin Jun. How powerful was he back then? Even after being crippled, he was still in the late stage of the Strongbone realm. Without a doubt, his father's peak cultivation was definitely higher than Ouyang Qingtian's. What kind of secret is hidden in my family? What is mother's place? One day, I will unravel it. He thought to himself. After a moment of silence, he said, "One day in the future, Tu Tianhui will be completely under your control." Hong Yayu was speechless at Qin Feng's sudden words. He said, "Why are you always changing your mind? You are the real leader of Tu Tianhui. I'll let you be the leader of Tu Tianhui. You should understand what I mean. You need to establish your authority in the gang." After a pause, Qin Feng continued, "This expansion will be a great opportunity for you. I will secretly let the crazy speech party give you some benefits." Hong Yayu looked at him in surprise and said, "You don't care about your own power? You should know that the more power you have, the more benefits you will have." "It's not that I don't care." Qin Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "It's that I don't have time. You should know that I will leave here sooner or later. As the descendant of sinners in the primitive land, you should know about the ancestral rules passed down from generation to generation." Hong Yayu was silent. Qin Feng glanced at her and continued, "St. Ruin is the only place to leave, but only a few people have the right to do so. And I have this right. Compared to other things, the responsibility on my shoulders is the most important. I have always known why I came to St. Ruin. After I leave, I will be most assured to leave Tu Tianhui in your hands. If that's the case, why do you have to work so hard to establish Tu Tianhui?" Hong Yayu didn't understand. Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. "First, if the power grows, it can give you a guarantee and help others who are still suffering. Second, I also want to use this power to protect my family in the City of Sin." Hearing this, Hong Yayu sighed. This was the consequence of being the descendant of sinners. Even if he didn't have anything to worry about, he had to think about his family. "Don't worry." She patted Qin Feng's shoulder. "Thank you." The next day, Ying Yuan and Gu Jiulai came to find him. They looked at him from left to right and kept sizing him up. Their eyes were shining with greed. "Huh. As expected, when I heard about your actions in the Sacred Dragon Realm, I guessed that your body's problem had been solved." Gu Jiulai laughed loudly. "Little cutie, come with me quickly. I want to see the difference between the yin-yang integration formation that you guys cultivated and mine." Then, he glared at Gu Jiulai and said, "Old man, don't fight with me. I'm just using it for a while. For the next week, you can have all of little cutie's use." Qin Feng's face darkened. What the hell was that? Soon, the problem student became a disciple of the Heavenly Palace again. However, not many people were surprised. After all, they had gone through the Divine Bestowment and General Guardian platform with him. They all knew this result. Qin Feng finally dealt with the two of them, and then began to ask for compensation. In less than half a month, all the ingredients for the regeneration pill were collected. There were 3 sets, and Qin Feng was overjoyed. To him, in the City of Sin, the regeneration pill was no doubt a natural barrier. However, to the people of the Saint Ruin, it was not too difficult. Those were the strongest students. With their own collections and connections, it was absolutely terrifying. He was not surprised that they had obtained it in such a short time. In the end, he asked Gong Xiaoxi for Ying Yuan to find someone to help him refine the regeneration pill. Fortunately, he had prepared 3 sets. This spiritual alchemist had destroyed 2 sets of ingredients to refine the regeneration pill. Sister, you can finally step onto the path of cultivation again. Looking at the round pill in his hand, Qin Feng smiled with relief. However, it was troublesome to deliver the regeneration pill to Qin Yao. The 2 places were far apart. Even if he hurried without any obstacles, it would take more than a month to go back and forth. At this time, he thought of the clear sky gourd on him. At the same time, he thought of someone. He could not use the clear sky gourd, so he could only find that person. Chapter 196. Can you blame me? After calming himself down, Qin Feng quietly approached Flower Demon's door and whispered, Sister Genie, are you asleep? Asleep. Hua Xiaoyao's grimacing voice came from inside. How are you going to respond to me if you're asleep? Can I talk in my sleep? Qin Feng's mouth twitched. He quickly nodded and said, Sister Genie, whatever you say. I'm here to apologize to Sister Genie. I deeply regret offending you that day. I've been avoiding you these past few days because I'm ashamed and can't face you. Why are you here now? Flower Demon stood behind the door and laughed coldly. Qin Feng felt a chill run down his spine. He braced himself and said, I can't bear the torment in my heart. I live in pain and regret all day. I hate myself for being blinded by greed. I want to atone for my sins, so I've decided to come and apologize. I hope Sister Genie can forgive me. Okay, I forgive you. You can leave now. Flower Demon's indifferent voice came from the room. Qin Feng was stunned. Was this guy so easy to talk to? He paused for a moment and said, Sister Genie, why don't you open the door and we can talk about it in detail? Okay, since you're so sincere, how can I refuse? Flower Demon opened the door. The moonlight shone in and covered her body with a layer of holy moonlight. However, when Qin Feng saw the smile on the pale face and the rosy lips that lifted up to reveal 2 rows of white teeth, he couldn't help but shudder. A beauty bathed in moonlight and smiled. It should have been the most beautiful scene in the world, but he felt like he was looking at a demon. The demon's ferocious appearance and its bloody mouth weren't the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that this demon was smiling at you. That smile made your hair stand on end. Amidst that chainsaw-like sinister laughter, Qin Feng braced himself and walked in with his numb scalp. With a bang, the door closed. Qin Feng's body trembled. His chrysanthemum tightened as he quivered. Sister Genie, I have something to discuss with you. Okay, let's talk on the bed. Flower Demon suddenly hugged Qin Feng from behind and threw him onto the bed. Qin Feng was scared out of his wits. Sister Genie, I'd rather die than sell my body. Flower Demon ignored him. She suddenly turned over and pressed Qin Feng on the bed. Then, with a carp flip, she sat on Qin Feng. Her originally smiling eyes immediately widened as she glared angrily at Qin Feng, her pair of small fists landing densely on Qin Feng's chest. Bastard, rogue, pervert, you even dare to steal my things. You must be tired of living. Pressing down on Qin Feng's body, Hua Xiaoyao cursed in a low voice. For more than 10 minutes, she did not repeat herself. That pink fist also mercilessly landed on Qin Feng's chest. Since he was the one asking for help, Qin Feng didn't fight back, allowing Flower Demon to vent on him. Qin Feng saw that after venting for a while, she still showed no signs of stopping. He couldn't help but grab Flower Demon's fists. Sister Genie, that's enough. If you continue like this, don't blame me. Before he could finish, Flower Demon suddenly bent down, lying on Qin Feng's chest. Her small red mouth opened, and with a crunch, she bit Qin Feng's ear. A sharp pain came, and Qin Feng abruptly increased the force in his hand. Flower Demon, are you a dog? Hurry up and let go. Pain also came from her small fists. Flower Demon shook her head and increased the force of her bite, her mouth even making a buzzing sound in protest. Seeing that Flower Demon still hadn't let go, Qin Feng increased the force in his hand, but the pain in his ear also increased. Just like that, one of them refused to let go, and the other refused to let go. Just like that, the two of them continued to waste time. However, Qin Feng couldn't hold on any longer. Flower Demon had forged the strongest bones, so this bit of physical damage was useless. His ear was a small piece of meat, and he couldn't take it anymore. Sister Genie, please be magnanimous and let me go. He began to beg for mercy. If you want to talk to me, that's fine. Flower Demon opened her mouth, smiling like a little demon. You have to let me vent my anger. Just like how Qin Feng understood her, she also understood Qin Feng's nature. For him to suddenly be so easy to talk to, there was definitely something he needed her help with, and it could only be her. During this time, Qin Feng had been avoiding her. She had already accumulated a belly full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. Today, she had to properly teach him a lesson. Seeing Flower Demon smile, Qin Feng felt a chill. This little demon couldn't be thinking of, however, he was thinking too much. Flower Demon just wanted to beat him up and then bite his ear and shoulder a few times. Crunch! Ouch! Flower Demon bit Qin Feng's neck, causing him to grimace in pain, and tears were about to flow out. Damn, you're worse than a dog. Big Flower Demon, I'm not begging you anymore. Get off me. Oh. Flower Demon shook her head and bit with all her strength. Qin Feng was in so much pain that his hair stood on end, and he kept struggling. The two of them, one lying down and the other lying down, were in a somewhat ambiguous position. However, the two of them were at a young and ignorant age. For a moment, they didn't pay attention to this. However, no matter how ignorant they were still young boys and girls who were about to become adults. Some primitive senses began to appear, and as the two of them struggled, those primitive senses began to appear. Their instincts also broke through the suppression of reason and erupted. At some point, Flower Demon suddenly loosened her bite, raised her head, looked at Qin Feng, and asked innocently, "Little cutie, why are you staring at me?" Hearing Flower Demon's ignorant words, Qin Feng suddenly felt blood rush to his brain, making Flower Demon's perception clearer. After the initial confusion, Flower Demon also came back to her senses. Suddenly, her beautiful face was incomparably red. Under the situation of shame and anger, her mind was blank, and she was stunned for a moment. You go down first," Qin Feng gasped and said with some difficulty, almost unable to resist the urge to change positions. At this time, Flower Demon also completely came back to her senses. She was flustered, and her body and brain lost coordination, and she fell down. Bang! Listening to the crisp, muffled sound, Qin Feng guessed that it was her forehead that kissed the ground first. "Damn little cutie, I'm going to kill you." In the dark room, Flower Demon's angry and embarrassed scolding came out. "Damn, you can't blame me for this." Qin Feng couldn't stay in this place anymore. He wanted to go out and think of another way, but before he could take a few steps, Flower Demon, who was lying on the ground, hugged both of his legs. Qin Feng couldn't hold back his strength and fell to the ground with a bang. Flower Demon took the opportunity to lie on his back and stretched out her arms to lock Qin Feng's throat. "You damn pervert. Who is a pervert between the two of us? From the beginning to the end, I was the passive one." Qin Feng cried out in grievance. What was going on? He pried Flower Demon's arms away and said, "Sister Genie, let's not think about revenge. I do have something to ask of you. If you're still like this, I won't ask you anymore, and I won't return the treasure." "Okay, tell me what is first. Get up first." Chapter 197. Return to the City of Sin, this little devil. Qin Feng sighed. He didn't want to argue with her about this. He went straight to the point and said, I have an urgent matter that requires me to return to the city of sin. But with my speed, it will take a long time. I need the clear sky gourd. You want to go back? Flower Demon was shocked. She hurriedly got up and asked doubtfully, Why are you going back? At that time, you risked your life to break through the layers of blockade to get in. Qin Feng got up and patted the dust off his body. He was speechless. I'm just going back for a while. It's not like I'm never coming back. Hearing this, the Flower Demon nodded slightly and rolled her eyes. After a while, she said with a sly smile, You want me to teach you how to control the green sky gourd? Yes. Qin Feng nodded. He had seen the speed of the clear sky gourd. It would take no more than a week for a round trip. Moreover, it was safer to fly in the sky. But why should I teach you? Isn't that like throwing a meat bun at a dog? Flower Demon said, If you teach it to me, I'll return the clear sky gourd to you when I come back. But if you don't hand it over, this treasure will be mine. Qin Feng shrugged, knowing that it was useless to talk to her nicely. He said, Anyway, the gourd is already in my hands. If you teach me how to use it, it will return to your hands. But if you don't teach me, although I don't know how to use it, you will never have the chance to take it back. Flower Demon gritted her teeth. Are you threatening me? I'm discussing with you. Qin Feng shook his head and said, But you don't seem to be willing. Nonsense. You've done such inhumane things to me. Do you think I'll be nice to you? Inhumane? Qin Feng was speechless. Wasn't it just stealing a few treasures? Was there a need to make it sound so tragic? He waved his hand and said, I'm giving you a chance to take back your treasure. Flower Demon was so angry that she bared her fangs and claws. He obviously had a favor to ask of her, but he still said that she was a saint and wanted to give her a chance. But she couldn't refute it, because the item was in the other party's hands, and she couldn't beat the other party. Most importantly, the other party was an even more unreasonable bastard than her. All right, I can help you, but you have to return all the other treasures to me, she said. No matter how depressed and angry she was, she could only compromise for the time being. Wait until I get all the treasures. See how I'll deal with you. Qin Feng was stunned by Flower Demon's straightforwardness. He couldn't believe that she was so easy to talk to. However, on second thought, he had her weakness in his hands, so he didn't dare to disagree. Thinking of this, he wanted to slap himself. He should have known that he couldn't talk to this devil. He should have just threatened her directly. Anyway, he didn't expect to have any righteous and great image in front of her. Qin Feng readily agreed to Flower Demon's request. He took out the golden net and said, To show my sincerity, I'll give you one first. When you teach me how to use the green sky gourd, I'll return the rest to you. Wait a minute. I didn't say that I would teach you how to use the green sky gourd. Flower Demon quickly put away the golden net and said, The green sky gourd is a huge treasure. I can't teach it to others so easily. Plus, if you can control the green sky gourd, what if you steal it one day? Am I that kind of person? Qin Feng stared at her. Aren't you? Flower Demon stared back, bullying the weak, taking advantage of others' misfortune, and cheating others. Haven't you done a lot of things like that? Flower Demon. Qin Feng clenched his teeth and wanted to beat her up. These words were more suitable for her. Seeing that Qin Feng was about to explode, she calmly waved her hand and said, Of course I can't teach you, but I can send you back. Qin Feng froze. You want to go back to the city of sin with me? Of course. Flower Demon nodded. You are my junior. I have to protect you. If you go back alone, Sister Genie will be worried. Qin Feng's lips twitched. What the F***CK? She was being so straightforward just now, and now she was acting like this. Who was she trying to fool? But he knew that if he didn't agree, there was no way they could talk about this. You can come with me, but you can't do anything stupid. You know that to the people there, I am still a slave who escaped. They will reward me if I am caught. I don't want to get into a conflict with the people there. Qin Feng reminded her. Of course. Flower Demon glared at Qin Feng and said unhappily, In your heart, am I someone who likes to cause trouble? Are you not that kind of person? Qin Feng thought to himself, but he still smiled against his conscience. Of course not. In my heart, Sister Genie is someone who knows how to be patient and look at the big picture. Don't smile so fake. Do you think I don't know what you were thinking? Flower Demon exposed him. Qin Feng shrugged his shoulders. The two of them knew each other very well, so there was no need to talk about how good he was. After all the compliments from the other party were fake. Okay, I don't have much to do these few days anyway. Let's go now, Flower Demon said. Qin Feng nodded. He was thinking the same thing. The two of them came to the yard. Flower Demon summoned her technique, and the clear sky gourd immediately enlarged. Suddenly, she stopped what she was doing and asked Qin Feng, "Little cutie, do you need medicine right now?" Qin Feng's face twitched. He didn't want to waste time with her and said, "When we get back, let's go to the medicine garden and do something else. Since you have this idea, then, as your sister, I will reluctantly help you one more time." Qin Feng stumbled and his face darkened. "Sister Jeannie, can we not pretend to be so noble? We are both smart people. There is no point in pretending." Flower Demon chuckled. "It is so refreshing to talk to smart people. Come on up." The two of them sat on the clear sky gourd and quickly flew out of St. Ryuin towards the city of Sin. Even with the clear sky gourd, they only arrived at the city of Sin after 3 days. It was already midnight. Qin Feng and Flower Demon quietly flew into the city of Sin and landed at the Qin family's palace. Qin Feng arrived at Qin Yao's yard and was silent. "If you have something to do, hurry up and do it," Flower Demon urged in a small voice. Qin Feng didn't pay any attention to him. He just stared at Qin Yao's room without blinking. After a long while, he sighed and took out a wooden box and a letter that he had already prepared. He stood there in a daze. Flower Demon stared at him with curiosity. This was the first time she saw Qin Feng so depressed. "I heard that you found someone to make the regeneration dance. Is it for the people here?" Flower Demon asked in a small voice. Qin Feng nodded and sighed again. His spiritual force carried the wooden box containing the regeneration elixir and the letter and flew towards the room. At the same time, he separated a strand of spiritual force, opened the door bolt, and sent the letter and the elixir in. "Sister, I look forward to your return. I look forward to finding the glory that belong to you. A genius should not be buried, and you even more so. I also look forward to the day that we can fight side by side. I hope that the light of hope can shine into this dark land." Chapter 198. Conveniently wiped them out. Qin Feng had a lot of things he wanted to tell Qin Yao. He wanted to share with her what he had experienced in the past 6 months. But now that he was here, he couldn't say anything. There was only a piece of paper that simply stated her identity and the regeneration pill that could allow her to return. He paused for a moment, then turned to leave. He thought that no one would notice him, but he didn't know that after he left, Qin Yao slowly got up from the bed and went to the window. Through the gap, she watched his back gradually disappear into the darkness. Qin Yao slowly came to the center. Looking at the envelope and the wooden box, she murmured, "Xiaofeng, you must have suffered a lot to become so powerful. Don't worry, Big Sister will be back. No matter how fierce the storm is, Big Sister will face it with you. Wait for me, sister." Qin Yao smiled. At this moment, her eyes shone with a dazzling light. It was as if the heavenly girl who shocked even the city of Sin had returned. Indeed, after being silent for almost a year, it was time for her to return. "Aunt Lan, thank you. But even without you, I will use my life to protect my brother." After leaving the Qin family, Qin Feng walked outside. He wasn't in a hurry to go back. He wanted to take one last look at this place that had accompanied him for more than 10 years. He knew that he had done everything he needed to do. After this farewell, he didn't know when he would be able to return. Perhaps he would return home in glory. Perhaps he would die in a foreign land. Looking at the depressed Qin Feng, the Flower Demon laughed and asked, "Is that person your relative?" There were so many people who owed him favors, but he only wanted the medicinal ingredients for the regeneration pill. Moreover, he was in such a hurry to come back. It must be someone very important to him. Qin Feng nodded slightly. His voice was filled with a deep helplessness and hatred that Flower Demon had never felt before. "My sister. If she hadn't been crippled, she would have been the one to enter the St. Ryuin. As for me, I would still be living peacefully under her protection. She is the most talented person in the city of sin, and the sister I respect the most. Although she is now a cripple, she has always been the goal that I strive for. She is a role model. In my heart, she is the greatest person. I, too, hope that one day I can become as great as her. Flower Demon's eyes widened. She didn't understand how a cripple could be so great in Qin Feng's eyes, but she could see that Qin Feng had deep feelings for his sister. It could even be said that he was very dependent on her. He worked so hard because of his sister. She was his goal. What kind of sister is she? Flower Demon muttered to herself. She was very sensible and didn't go against Qin Feng at this time. Because in her heart, she believed that there were only two kinds of feelings in the world that could not be messed with or trampled on. They were the kinship between family members and the love between lovers. These two kinds of feelings needed to be carefully protected. She silently followed behind Qin Feng. She could feel his disappointment and his low mood. She also understood why. Other than his sister, there was also the farewell. Flower Demon lowered her head. Thinking about how she would have to say goodbye to her family and the Saint Ryuin in the near future, she felt suffocated. Without noticing, she bumped into Qin Feng's back. "Little cutie, what are you doing?" She held her head and looked up unhappily. However, when she saw Qin Feng turn around, she felt a bone-chilling murderous intent. Flower Demon's heart trembled. She had never seen Qin Feng like this. The murderous aura around him was almost tangible. How much hatred did he have for him to have such a strong murderous intent? This kind of Qin Feng, even she couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. Soon, her expression changed. She suddenly looked forward. She finally understood why Qin Feng was overflowing with murderous intent. She didn't know when, but a person walked over from the end of the street. Immediately after, black shadows appeared on both sides of the street. In a short time, more than 10 people had gathered. In sky, Qin Feng's voice was soft, but Hua Xiaoyao could feel that the surrounding temperature had dropped significantly. "Qin Feng, hee, I didn't think that you would dare to escape back. What a surprise. You actually survived the great slave conquest." In Kong's old face revealed a sinister smile. "Renault was killed by you, right?" Qin Feng coldly snorted and said, "I just came out of the Qin family, and you guys appeared. I guess you guys aren't doing this for me, but for the Qin family." Hee. In Kong smiled faintly. "The city lord's manor was blamed by the imperial capital because of you escaped slaves. During this period of time, they have been trying to make connections and have no time to care about the city's affairs. I think that there's no need for a declining family like yours to exist." Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. A cold, murderous intent flashed through his eyes. He slowly clenched his fist. He had guessed correctly. The Yin family really wanted to kill the Qin family. He looked at the two plates, then pulled Flower Demon and ran out of the city. "What are you doing? These people are so weak. With your strength, you can easily crush them. Why are you running?" Flower Demon whispered. "I don't want to attract attention," Qin Feng said. He quickly ran out of the city with Flower Demon, while In Kong chased after him. Qin Feng came to a small forest outside the city and stopped. "What? You know you can't run anymore." In Kong smiled sinisterly. He waved his hand and said coldly, "Kill them." Suddenly, a dozen people behind him brandished their long sabers and rushed over with murderous intent. Qin Feng sneered and extended a hand. He slowly clenched his fist, and flames flickered. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, the dozen people burst into flames. In a short 10 seconds, the dozen sea expansion experts were all turned to ashes. This scene shocked In Kong and the other two bone-strengthening elders. What kind of method was this? He could kill a dozen sea expansion experts with a flip of his hand. You've reached the bone-strengthening realm? In Kong looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. His face was trembling, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. How long had it been since they last met? Qin Feng had already become so strong. If they didn't stop him, the next time he returned, the Yin family would definitely be destroyed. "Let's attack together," In Kong said. The three of them charged at Qin Feng with ferocious spiritual energy. Qin Feng smiled coldly. He still used the same hand, but the flames disappeared and the soft sound of water could be heard. Whoosh! 3 streams of water energy shot out from his palms and transformed into 3 large hands. In an instant, they grabbed the 3 of them. Bone strengthening late stage. King Kong was horrified. The other 2 were also shocked. In less than a year, he had reached the bone strengthening late stage from the early sea expansion realm. How is this possible? However, no matter how much they didn't believe it, the 3 sailors still held them tightly. That kind of terrifying power made them feel like their hearts were dead. Of the 3, only King Kong had reached the bone strengthening late stage, while the other 2 were only at the intermediate stage. Even if they were twice as strong, he could still easily suppress them. Little bastard, you! How can you be so strong? King Kong's old face trembled, and his heart was in turmoil. If I destroy you, the Yin family will suffer a great loss. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth held a faint smile, but this kind of smile had a coldness that made people tremble with fear. Chapter 199. A Blood Moon in the Sky. After killing King Kong and the others and burning their corpses, Qin Feng was still worried and returned to the city. He snuck into the Yin family and killed 2 bone-strengthening experts before leaving. The city of Sin wasn't like St. Ryuin. The loss of a bone-strengthening realm warrior was a huge loss even to the top 10 clans. The Yin family had lost 5 of them at once, which was a huge blow to their strength. Coupled with the fear of not being able to find them alive or dead, they probably didn't have the energy to deal with the Qin family. If it wasn't for the fact that Yin Changlai had reached the complete bone fortification realm, it wouldn't be easy to kill him quietly. Lu Shang didn't want to go through so much trouble. On the night of the 6th day, they returned to St. Ryuin. Qin Feng returned all the treasures to the Flower Demon. After that, under her insistence, they once again entered the herb garden in St. Ryuin and stole many rare herbs before returning to rest. The next day, Qin Feng went to Tu Tianhui. Tu Tianhui's expansion was progressing more smoothly than he had imagined. With the crazy speech party secretly opening the way, they had already successfully established a territory here. Moreover, the people of the Earth class also tacitly approved of the existence of this gang. Qin Feng was quite satisfied with this. The first step was done, and the next step was to slowly nibble away at it. If it weren't for your growing prestige, I'm afraid they wouldn't have turned a blind eye to us so easily, Hong Ye said. This is a form of capital. The Tang sect, the Beauty Gang, and the Crazy Words Gang, which one of them didn't rely on capital to rise. Qin Feng smiled and had a short meeting with everyone. He found that the strategy they had decided on was quite good. It was a little conservative, but Tu Tianhui didn't need to take risks now. Taking the safe route was the most appropriate. For the next few days, Qin Feng followed behind Ying Yuan, asking him about his knowledge of spiritual power and things to pay attention to. At this time, he realized the benefits of having a qualified teacher. Although Ying Yuan didn't teach him other powerful spirit arrays, he still learned a lot. At the very least, he now knew that in a distant era, the spiritual outer coffin wasn't a life-threatening talisman for psychic masters. Instead, it was a powerful trump card for nurturing psychic power. However, Ying Yuan had also told him that this theory might not be reliable. As far as he knew, there was no spiritual force master who could ignore the influence of the spiritual outer coffin. However, this was enough for Qin Feng. His spiritual outer coffin did not belong to this primitive land. It came from the outside world, and it was very likely that it belonged to a very powerful family. With Ying Yuan's words and his mother's influence, Qin Feng firmly believed that his crystal-colored spiritual outer coffin would be harmless to him. However, his spiritual outer coffin still couldn't be seen by others. Once an external force entered, the spiritual outer coffin would automatically hide itself. Moreover, he had not truly grasped the method of condensing. He had only condensed it in a special state at that time. Otherwise, he might have been able to pass it on to the spirit masters here. There is no doubt that if all the spirit masters in St. Ryuin could master this technique, their battle prowess would definitely increase by a large margin. During this period of time, his cultivation of the fire god technique had also sped up. He could already use it as he wished, but its power was still weaker than the water god technique. However, he was not discouraged. He believed that it wouldn't be long before the fire god technique's power would definitely not be inferior to the water god technique. Apart from the yin-yang technique, everything else was going smoothly for him. I still have to think of a way to deal with the gray bead in the spiritual outer coffin. Standing at the top of the mountain and looking in the direction of the burial ground, Qin Feng fell silent. Although the gray bead did not affect him in the moment, it still came from the gray fog. Qin Feng did not dare to let his guard down and wanted to get rid of it. Whoever started the trouble should end it. He sighed. In the end, he still decided to go to the burial ground to find that mysterious old man. Of course, he did not dare to come during the day. He could only wait until it was dark. As night fell, a sinister wind howled in the burial ground. The sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling was extremely horrifying. When Qin Feng arrived, he still felt a chill run down his spine. This place and that old man still made him shudder. Suddenly, all the hair on his body stood on end and his muscles tensed up. He felt oppressed and suffocated. "Senior," he called out. He knew that the old man had appeared. "Young man, you're here again?" The old man appeared behind him and laughed, revealing a mouthful of old, yellowed teeth. Qin Feng turned around and looked at the old man. He asked, "Did you do something to the gray fog in my body?" "Why do you ask?" The old man held onto his walking stick and smiled. "I've already dealt with the gray fog in the Holy Dragon realm," Qin Feng said. The old man smiled and sat in front of a tombstone, trembling. He looked up at Qin Feng. "Isn't that good? But I want to know if you were the one who did it." Qin Feng stared at the old man. "The gray fog appeared after I came into contact with you, but I dealt with it in the Holy Dragon realm. Do you think it's a coincidence? Do you know how much I've suffered because of this? Does it matter if it's true or not?" The old man shook his head and smiled. Ask yourself, do you think the gray fog has brought you more benefits or more disadvantages? Qin Feng was stunned. He did not understand what the old man meant. "Young man, don't just look at what's in front of you. Gains and losses are just some tests on the road of life. The world is full of ups and downs, and the world is full of changes. One day, when you look back and realize that all this was nothing but a waste of effort, you should understand." Qin Feng frowned and thought about the old man's words. Gains and losses. He was assigned to the profound class because of the gray fog, but he established the Tu Tianhui because of it. It was also because of the gray fog that he successfully learned the divine dragon technique. In the end, he just took a detour and did not lose anything. Instead, he gained a lot because of it. There was only the gray bead, but nothing bad had happened so far. "Old man you are." Qin Feng raised his head, only to discover that the old man had disappeared without him knowing. "What a strange fellow," Qin Feng mumbled as he left the area. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feng had been in St. Ryuan for 2.5 years. The strongest bone strengthening stage allowed him to have excellent abilities that others did not have. In just half a year, he reached the peak of the bone strengthening stage. However, this stage was a very special one. It needed time to polish and settle down before it could be psychic. Therefore, even though he had reached the peak of the bone strengthening stage a year ago, his cultivation had not increased at all. This was something he had never encountered before. In the past year or so, the Slaughtering Heaven Society had grown stronger and stronger and had already taken control of the entire Earth grade class. In the Earth grade class, except for a few people who belonged to the 3 gangs, almost everyone else had joined the Slaughtering Heaven Society. Tu Tianhui had also officially become the 4th largest society among the students, competing with the Tang sect, the Beauty Gang, and the Crazy Words Party. In Tu Tianhui territory, Qin Feng was discussing the plan to encroach on the Heaven class with others when he suddenly felt his heart palpitate. At the same time, there was a commotion outside. "Oh my God, how did the moon in the sky become red? Monstrous scarlet, I seem to smell blood." Chapter 200. The imperial capital's challenge, a blood moon, appeared in the sky without any warning. This caused a huge commotion in St. Ruin, no, in the entire primitive continent. In every corner of the primitive continent, countless people raised their heads and looked at the blood moon in the sky. Their faces were filled with deep shock and fear. Blood dyed the moon. Was the sky going to weep blood? Was it going to weep for the billions of lives? Was it going to be a terrifying disaster, a blood calamity? No one knew why, but on this night, everyone in the primitive continent felt their chests tighten, as if they were about to suffocate. Qin Feng also came out with the crowd. Looking at the blood moon in the sky, his heart trembled. This phenomenon was a great omen. At the same time, countless experts in the primitive continent felt their hearts sink. They raised their heads and looked at the blood moon in the sky, remaining silent for a long time. Qin Feng hurried to find Gu Jiulai, wanting to know what was going on. It was a false alarm, a natural disaster, a man-made blood calamity. Gu Jiulai shook his head and sighed. Such a phenomenon, according to the records, has only appeared 3 times. The first time was a natural disaster. A meteorite fell, causing 30% of the people in the primitive continent to die. The second time was a man-made blood calamity. A madman started a blood chaos, sweeping through the entire primitive continent. Blood dyed the sky. Blood flowed like rivers. Too many people died. What about the third time? Qin Feng asked. Gu Jiulai was silent for a long time, then said, "This is also the most terrifying one because there are no records at all. What happened when the blood moon appeared?" Hearing this, Qin Feng was stunned. If that's the case, why is it the most terrifying one? You don't understand. Gu Jiulai shook his head, his eyes filled with deep worry. That was a very long time ago. The records of the present era are not very detailed. The 2 oldest books in this land, the Ancient Heavenly Chapter and the Time-Changing Record, both recorded the appearance of the blood moon. However, it's not that there are no records of what happened, but that it was erased by someone. Erased by someone? Qin Feng was shocked. Why? Did they not want the future generations to know what happened when the blood moon appeared that time? For some reason, Qin Feng's heart felt very heavy. He knew that he shouldn't be worried about such a big matter, but he still felt very depressed. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Even if the sky fell, there were tall people to hold it up. He didn't need to waste his time thinking about it. The appearance of the blood moon in the sky caused quite a commotion in the primitive land. Everyone was in fear and trepidation, worried that something terrifying would happen. However, after 3 days, nothing happened. Many people heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that it might have been a false alarm. Another half a month passed, and the primitive land became peaceful again. Only then did the people finally let out a breath of relief. At this time, Qin Feng and the other Sky Hall's disciples, as well as Zhou Yin, Wei Huang, Yu Huatian, and some other powerful students, were all gathered together. What's going on? In the main hall, Qin Feng asked the flower demon. The heavenly road might be opening soon, the flower demon said in a low voice. Her tone was serious. Qin Feng was shocked. The St. Triuin's heavenly road was finally opening. After more than 2 years in the academy, Qin Feng also knew how the St. Ruin sent people out of the primitive land. The heavenly road was an incomparably mysterious and ancient road that connected the primitive land to the outside world. No one could clearly explain the origin of this road. Even the St. Ruin only had the qualifications to control it. At a certain point in time, when it allowed, it would open, but they couldn't investigate. Moreover, this road had a rather strange suppression. Those who were over 28 years old couldn't be recognized by this road. Everyone only knew that there was an ancestral teaching passed down from generation to generation. If they wanted to overthrow the cruel slavery system here, the only way was to ascend the heavenly road and ask for the mandate of heaven. As for what it was and how to ask for the mandate of heaven, even the St. Ruin couldn't explain it clearly. Moreover, since ancient times, many outstanding people had stepped onto the heavenly road to ask for the mandate of heaven, but no one had returned. After entering the heavenly road, everyone seemed to have evaporated from the world, never to be seen again. However, This was the ancestral teaching, and it was the only way to overthrow the system here. Therefore, even though they knew that this was a very dangerous road, with a high chance of dying, there were still hot-blooded geniuses and young heroes who didn't care about their own lives. One after another, they stepped into the heavenly road to ask for the mandate of heaven for all the enslaved people. Several people appeared in the main hall. They were all the core members of the Saint Ryuin. Their leader was a middle-aged man with a dignified look on his face. This was the principal of the Saint Ryuin. This was also the first time Qin Feng had seen this mysterious principal. This person gave him a very strange feeling. He was standing right in front of him, but he gave off an illusory feeling. However, his every movement seemed to be able to control everything. A terrifying expert of the ninth heaven realm. Qin Feng secretly focused in his heart. He felt that this Dean's strength had probably already reached the point of transcending mortality and reaching the heavens and the earth. From his face, anyone could tell that this principal was at least several hundred years old, but he looked no different from a 30-year-old. Only a truly heaven-reaching expert could rejuvenate one's youth. Moreover, there were many experts of the ninth heaven realm in the Saint Ryuin, but only the principal gave him such a feeling. The Saint Ryuin is really not simple. Thinking of this, Qin Feng couldn't help but recall Ouyang Qingtian's words. There was a god living in the imperial capital. Of course, he now knew that this so-called god was just a title given by those who didn't know the inside story. It was a very terrifying expert, but it was said that he had passed away many years ago. No one knew whether this was true or not. However, he knew that even without this god, the imperial capital was far stronger than the Saint Ryuin. The reason why they were respectful was mainly because of the Saint Ryuin's connections and appeal. The imperial capital had many experts and other people in power. Many of them came from the Saint Ryuin, so they had to be wary and didn't dare to extend the slavery system here. However, in general, the imperial capital was still stronger than the Saint Ryuin. There was no need to doubt this. When you entered the Saint Ryuin, you shouldered this mission, and you were given the qualifications to carry out this mission. To plead for the people of the world, this is your honor, but also your misfortune. The principal's words were simple and straightforward. There were no motivational or heroic words, but there were only two meanings. Those with potential should worry about the worries of the people of the world. The descendants of sinners should fight and shake the ninth heaven, break the cage, and defy the heavens. These few short sentences were better than thousands of words. They stirred up the hot blood of the group. Compared to all the living things in the world, a single person's honor and disgrace was insignificant. Should the descendants of sinners accept a sad fate? No. If fate is unfair, we will fight against it. We will fight against the heavens with our battles, pour out our hot blood, and wash away the sinner's blood. Qin Feng didn't know why the principal had gathered them to say these words, but after listening to the principal's words, his blood boiled, and he saw his mission even more clearly. He wanted to challenge the path of heaven and ask for the will of the heavens. He wanted to use his battle and his hot blood to write a legendary life for his own destiny. He was waiting for the path of heaven to open 3 months later. 3 days later, a powerful person arrived at the Saint Ryuin. Not long after, the news of the imperial capital's challenge spread. Chapter 201. Worry. The imperial capital's challenge was out of everyone's expectations. No one had expected it to happen after the appearance of the blood moon. This made the hearts of many Saint Ryuin's higher-ups heavy. Adding on the fact that the Heavens Road was about to open, how could it be a coincidence that they issued a challenge at this time? It was more like a conspiracy. It wasn't that they didn't dare to refuse Daidu's invitation to Saint Ryuin, but they couldn't refuse. This was a battle between the peak of the younger generation, and it was a matter of face. In the eyes of others, nothing was more important than their lives. At the critical moment, they could even lose face. However, the Saint Ryuin couldn't do that. Even if the young geniuses who were qualified to ask the mandate of heaven to accept the challenge, they wouldn't refuse. The reason why Saint Ryuin was feared by the imperial capital was because In the eyes of all the slaves on the primitive land, St. Ryuin was a school that could contend with the imperial capital. This was because they had the most formal training base. The St. Ryuin prodigies who came out of the base were not weaker than the young people in the imperial capital. This was the only way to unite the hearts of the people and make everyone understand that the capital was not the strongest. The people who came out of St. Ryuin were not weaker than them. This would give the enslaved people hope. This was also the biggest reason why St. Ryuin was so popular. If one day this pure land that carried everyone's hopes lost the power to contend against the imperial capital, then not to mention other people, even those who were born in the St. Ryuin and were officials and generals in the imperial capital might not stand on the side of the St. Ryuin. This face, this dignity, involved the value of the last bargaining chip against this cruel system. The St. Ryuin could be defeated once or twice, but they could never not accept the challenge. He would lose the hearts of the people if he did that. Therefore, even if they knew that the imperial capital had ulterior motives for issuing a challenge before the heavenly road opened, they could only send these people to fight. These few days, Qin Feng was very calm. He didn't cultivate excessively. Instead, he was adjusting his state of mind to face the imperial capital's challenge. Without a doubt, he was one of the candidates. There was still half a month before they would head to the imperial capital. Before that, he had to adjust himself to his peak condition because he didn't know what kind of danger was waiting for him. With his identity as a student of the St. Ryuin school, the people in the capital would not dare to do anything to him. However, if they found out that he was responsible for young Master Jin's death, it would involve another aspect. Even the St. Ryuin school would not dare to guarantee that they could protect him. That matter was done flawlessly, but he couldn't be sure that young Master Jin's family didn't notice anything. If they found any clues, it would be a big problem. I hope I'm just worrying too much. He sighed softly. He had a feeling that something would happen during his trip to the imperial capital. When he thought of the blood moon that had appeared in the sky in broad daylight, his heart palpitated and he broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly threw away the bad thoughts and took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. He came to the heaven class to find some acquaintances. Now, other than Ouyang Shi, Zhao Qi, Fan Miao Miao, Xiao Yun, Long Zhan, Fushimi, and the others who had escaped with him had all become students of the heaven class. In the past 2 years, their cultivation had progressed very quickly. They had all reached the late stage of the bone-strengthening realm and were even at the peak of the spirit-detecting realm. They could be considered among the St. Ryuin school's students. Qin Feng had already expected this. Each of them was a genius among geniuses. To be able to be selected, none of them were simple. Whether it was the recruited traders or them, they were all true geniuses. At the beginning, the potential test was only a preliminary test. For them, it wasn't certain. After all, the cultivation environment they received was very different, resulting in some of their innate talents not being fully awakened. After receiving the most formal education, their innate talents were further unearthed, and their growth rate was very shocking. Most of the escaped slaves had already become the mainstay of the school. This was also why the St. Ryuin placed great importance on each batch of slaves and sent students to receive them. They knew that this was a large group of cultivation geniuses. Adding on the special nature of the bone-strengthening realm, even if the older students had already entered this realm, under the same cultivation environment, those with high innate talents would be able to catch up very quickly. This was the difference between geniuses and ordinary cultivators. Being in the lead for a while didn't mean that they would always be in the lead. Qin Feng was naturally looking for them to discuss the matter of killing young Master Jin. Because many of them were about to enter the capital, he was worried that an accident would happen. The possibility of that happening should be very small. If they noticed, they would have already come. Everyone gathered together. Most of them thought that Qin Feng was overthinking it and that this matter couldn't be exposed. Let's be careful. Qin Feng looked at Ouyang Shi, Zhao Qi, Xiao Yun, and the others and said, "If possible, try not to go to the capital. This may be our only chance to see our clansmen. No one wants to miss it," Long Zhan said with a somewhat gloomy tone. The others' faces darkened. Many of them came from large families. Other than them who were escaped slaves, there were many clansmen with potential who were recruited by the Great Slave Conquest. Now that they had the chance to see how they were doing, how could they easily give it up? Qin Feng sighed softly. In fact, he also had this thought. How were Qin Can, Qin Yi, and the others doing? He couldn't force this kind of thing. He could only helplessly say, "Everyone be careful. Don't accidentally say the wrong thing and give yourself away." Zhao Qi, Fan Miao Miao, and Fushimi were shocked and helpless that Qin Feng and the others had actually done such a big thing. They were shocked because Qin Feng actually dared to do such a thing. That was a great crime of extermination. They were helpless because this guy was always crazy. The things he did were simply stupefying. They had a deep understanding of this point. In the end, Qin Feng asked Ouyang Shi, Xiao Yun, Long Zhan, and Su Qin to stay behind. He said to them, "When the time comes, I will think of a way to put you on the list of candidates." Why? Ouyang Shi was puzzled and said, "I still want to fight with the people from the capital. As long as you are alive, there will be plenty of opportunities." Qin Feng shook his head and said, "If you're on the list of candidates, if the matter is really exposed, you can retreat at the first moment. In that case, why don't you do that? If I do that, won't it show that I have a guilty conscience? This will make it easier for others to see clues. I'm afraid that even the people from the St. Ryu Inn will be suspicious." Qin Feng shook his head. If it weren't for many factors, he really didn't want to get involved in this. He just wanted to quietly wait for the heavenly path to open and leave this place. Chapter 202. The Gathering. After returning to the soaring Phoenix Court, Qin Feng stayed in his room for a few days. This made Flower Demon, Gong Xiaoxi, and Tang Ran feel strange. The three girls gathered together, and Flower Demon said, "Little cutie, why are you so quiet these days? Did you get scared silly by Imperial Capital's challenge?" "I don't think so." Gong Xiaoxi shook her head and said, "This guy's a troublemaker. I've never seen him afraid of anything. Of course, this guy's Tu Tianhui is now reaching out to the Tang sect." Tang Ran snorted and said, "It's all your fault. Not only did you not stop him, but you also secretly helped him. Who knew he was so ambitious? Now even my beauty gang is going to be touched by him." Flower Demon cried. She regretted being tricked by Qin Feng and having the beauty gang secretly help Tu Tianhui. Now, the forces that they had supported had their sights set on them. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We're going to leave this place. When we formed the force, it was just for fun. Flower Demon said, giving herself a way out. Although they knew Tu Tianhui's intentions, it was too late. Tu Tianhui's development was very strong, and they had won over many experts. Even the force they were in didn't dare to provoke them. In addition, the crazy speech party was going to wear the same pants as Tu Tianhui. In a head-on confrontation, they were likely to be at a disadvantage. "Let's not talk about him." Flower Demon waved her hand and said, "Sister Ran, little Cece, what do you think about the battle with the young experts of Imperial Capital? What else can we think? If we don't agree, then we'll suppress them." Tang Ran was quite domineering. She had the confidence. She was the strongest in the strong-boned state. Few below the spirit-detecting state could defeat her. Don't underestimate those youngsters from the Imperial Capital. The 8 heavenly kings and the 3 lesser sovereigns are definitely not easy to deal with. Gong Xiaoxi shook her head slightly and said with a solemn expression, "The foundation of the capital is even stronger than that of St. Ruin. With their methods, I'm afraid that the young people they nurture will be very impressive." "That may be the case, but we are not made of mud." Tang Ran snorted. She was a little lacking in confidence. Naturally, she would not underestimate those young people in the capital. They had received much more training since childhood than they did. The 8 heavenly kings and the 3 little supremes? As long as little Cece and little Cutie make love to each other, they will all be defeated. The Flower Demon chuckled. Tang Ran also had a strange smile on his face. Among the current St. Ruin students, no one was more famous than the little fairy and the little cutie. In the past 2 years, the two of them had completely mastered the yin-yang integration formation. Someone had tried it before. When the two of them worked together, Even Tang Ke could not do anything to them. Tang Ke had broken through from the strongest in the strong-boned state to the spirit-detecting state. Ordinary spirit-detecting state experts were no match for him, but he still could not do anything to Qin Feng and Gong Xiaoxi. From this, it could be seen how terrifying this spirit formation was. Moreover, because of the yin-yang integration formation, their spirit power had increased much faster than before. They had both reached the peak of the primary level and were only one step away from the earth level. Of course, it was not easy to take this step. 3 great beauties. What are you talking about? It was unknown when Qin Feng walked over from behind, his face full of smiles. Let's go. This guy is definitely up to no good when he smiles like that. The flower demon was the first to react. She turned and ran. Qin Feng was stunned. What did he do? Gong Xiaoxi was speechless. She runs when you smile like that. You know it's definitely up to no good when she smiles like that. You two are really a perfect match. However, other than her master, the only person who can make the little demon run away without saying anything is you. Qin Feng revealed a very hurt expression and said, I was just greeting you with good intentions, that's all. Do I have to be cold when I see you? Isn't it said that a smile is the best bridge between people? But why is it that when you smile at us, it makes us feel like you're hiding evil intentions? Tang Ran snorted. Back then, it was he who had used this harmless smile to trick Mo Feng and Xian Yan. He had also made Gong Xiaoxi and Flower Demon ask beauties to go easy on his 2 Tianhui. Moreover, in the past 2 years, whenever this fellow had something to ask of them, he would smile like that. When there was nothing to do, he would hide far away. Sometimes, they wouldn't see him for half a month. Now that he was smiling like that, it was definitely not a good thing for them. This was already a phenomenon. Qin Feng was very hurt. This time, he really didn't have anything to ask of them. He just wanted to chat with the beauties to relieve his depressed mood. Because he had been feeling uneasy these past few days, he kept feeling that something bad was going to happen. So, he wanted to play with them and change his mood. Who would have thought that they would treat him like he was a viper? They avoided him far away and were very wary of him. Am I that unpopular? He touched his chin and was speechless. Really disappointing. He glanced at the 2 girls who treated him like a thief. His smile disappeared and was replaced by a scowl. We're still used to you like this. Gong Xiaoxi nodded and said. Qin Feng's mouth twitched. Was she praising him or scolding him? However, his depressed mood was indeed a lot better. Haha, come, beauties, let's have a few drinks today. Qin Feng forcefully pulled Gong Xiaoxi and Tang ran over. He then called Mo Feng, Qian Yin, and Tang Ke over to drink and chat with them. Qin Feng, do you have something to say? Tang Ke held a wine cup and looked at Qin Feng and smiled. The others also stopped what they were doing and looked at him. Qin Feng was indeed a little abnormal today. What can I do? I just want to get together with you guys. After all, in these 2 years, we are already old comrades who have fought with our lives on the line. Qin Feng looked up and smiled. Tang Ke smiled and shook his head. He looked at the wine cup and said softly, the trip to the imperial capital is unpredictable. The opening of the heavenly road is getting closer and closer. Our gatherings are getting fewer and fewer. The scene suddenly quieted down. The few of them were a little disappointed. Let's not talk about what would happen in the imperial capital. Just taking the mandate of heaven as an example, whether they could all walk out of this land alive was a problem. Perhaps they would never have the chance to get together again. Why is everyone like this? Be a little happier. Don't make the atmosphere so uncomfortable. Qin Feng smiled and said, yes, everyone be a little happier. Don't let our last moments be spent in this state. Tang Ke drank the wine in his cup and said, today, we won't go home until we're drunk. They drank until very late that night. In the end, everyone was drunk. Qin Feng did not expect that this would be their last gathering. In this life, it would be difficult for them to gather together again. Before the opening of the heavenly road, after the imperial capital's coronation war, an unforeseen event caused a bloodbath that shocked the entire primitive land. Millions of corpses were strewn everywhere. Chapter 203. Entering the imperial capital almost every few years, the imperial capital would hold a king-conferring ceremony to attract cultivators from all over the world to participate and select the most talented ones. It could be said that this was an opportunity for the enslaved. As long as they performed outstandingly in the king-conferring ceremony and caught the eye of a big shot, a big family, or a big power, they would be able to leap over the Dragon Gate and escape the category of being a slave. Usually, even if there weren't any generous prizes, cultivators from all over the world would still participate enthusiastically. But at the same time, there was danger. After all, the enslaved people had a low status, and where there was light, there was darkness. Sometimes, there wasn't absolute fairness. Especially those who performed outstandingly in the king-conferring ceremony and were unwilling to submit to the imperial capital. They would be targeted and assassinated in secret. Therefore, the top disciples of the Saint Ryuin and other big and small powers wouldn't participate in this kind of ceremony. Since ancient times, some fish leaped over the Dragon Gate and became a dragon, while others became a dead fish. But no matter what, this was an opportunity to leap over the Dragon Gate, and it would always attract the attention of many enslaved cultivators, except for the top disciples of the various powers. But this time, the imperial capital had publicly issued a challenge to the Saint Ryuin, stating that they wanted to spar with the young geniuses that the Saint Ryuin had painstakingly nurtured. Probably only the Saint Ryuin who knew about the Heaven's Path would know what they were thinking. Every time the Heaven's Path opened, the imperial capital would think of ways to obstruct it, because once the Heaven's Path was successful, it would change the existing order of the primitive land. This was something that the high and mighty families wouldn't allow to happen. Although there were no successful examples so far, they didn't dare to not guard against this hidden danger. But the imperial capital didn't dare to openly make a move against the young geniuses of the Saint Ryuin, because it would cause chaos in the world. But no one knew what would happen after the king-conferring ceremony. So this time, the Saint Ryuin had sent a large number of experts to follow them on this trip to the imperial capital. They had also greeted the generals and officials with real power in the imperial capital, so that the imperial capital wouldn't dare to mess around. The imperial capital was located in the center of the primitive land. It was the core area of the imperial capital and ruled over a large territory. Staring at this ancient city that had existed for an unknown number of years, Qinfeng sighed. In this city, there was a distinction between the nobility and the lowly. Those who lived in the city were all nobles, while those who lived outside the city were all enslaved slaves. In the past, one would need a special pass to enter the city. However, things were different these days. Anyone could enter without any defenses. Many figures could be seen entering the city in 2s and 3s. Everyone had a hopeful and fervent look on their faces. They all hoped to turn their lives around and free themselves from slavery. Since the people from the Saint Ryuin had arrived, the imperial capital naturally did not dare to refuse them. Several important figures personally came out to welcome them into the city. This was the center of the imperial capital, so it was naturally incomparably bustling. Numerous tall buildings stood in great numbers, arranged in rows upon rows, and on the streets, there was an endless stream of horses and carriages, and all sorts of sounds of hawking and shouting came in an endless stream. Saint Ryuin politely declined the restaurant that the imperial capital had reserved for them. Instead, they secretly surveyed the area and chose a small, mediocre relay station to settle down. At night, the imperial capital was even more brightly lit and abnormally lively. Many Saintmen students cultivated in the courtyard and rarely came to the outside world. Therefore, they were very interested and could not help but want to go out for a stroll. In this regard, Saint Ryuin's higher-ups did not refuse, but sternly warned them not to cause trouble. This move could be said to be a disguised test by Saint Ryuin to those people in the imperial capital. Qinfeng, Ouyang Shi, Zhao Qi, Fan Miao Miao, and the others strolled outside for a while and felt bored. In his opinion, it was really boring to haggle with a hawker over a completely useless piece of jewelry. Squatting on a tree branch for half an hour just to watch acrobatics. Wasn't this a pain in the ass? After he hinted for the 8th time, they finally stopped and ordered supper at a nearby snack shop. This place is even bigger than Heavenly Sun City, as expected of the imperial capital. Yes, there are many things that Dragon City doesn't have. The few girls chattered, beaming with joy and blushing slightly. This made Qin Feng feel very embarrassed. It was not a big deal, but they made it seem like a country bumpkin entering the city. He really wanted to say that they were people of status, so they should not act like fools and let others laugh at them. He regretted coming out with them. But soon, he found that there were still benefits. This kind of snack shop was very crowded, and there were many people coming and going. There were many people, so a lot of news could be heard here. But most of the news was about the king naming ceremony. What kind of prizes there were, who were the outstanding geniuses, who would be promoted in what rank, and so on. That's right, did you know? Tonight, there will be a treasure exchange at the God Treasure Pavilion. Many young talents will participate. Should we go and take a look? What does the treasure exchange have to do with young talents? Are you stupid? I don't know how many people will be attracted to this king-conferring ceremony. Naturally, many people from all over the world will come with treasures. Although it's called a treasure exchange event, it's actually a meet and greet for the young experts of the world. In a few days, the king naming ceremony will start. I think many people will be interested in the participants. It is good for everyone to know in advance or make friends with some people. That's right, and there are many treasures in the God Treasure Pavilion. Listening to the conversation at the next table, Qin Feng was a little interested. He was not interested in the participants, but he was very interested in the treasures. Sky Thunder Pearl? He vaguely heard the 3 words Sky Thunder Pearl when they were talking about treasures. Does the God Treasure Pavilion sell Sky Thunder Pearls? Qin Feng murmured to himself, his eyes burning. The heavenly thunder bead was a kind of offensive weapon. It was formed by a supreme master in a thunderstorm by condensing the power of thunder and lightning. It contained an extremely pure and violent power of thunder and lightning. Generally, even if a low-level Sky Thunder Pearl was detonated, the power would make a strong-bone realm warrior embarrassed. What Qin Feng cared about was not the power, but the pure thunder and lightning power. The Sky Thunder Pearl contained the thunder and lightning power, and the thunder and lightning power was a kind of pure yang energy. His yin-yang technique had not made any progress, because the energy he absorbed could only produce ordinary yang or yin qi. It could not resonate with the yin and yang in his body, and was quickly assimilated. Only after coming into contact with it did Qin Feng know that it was not so easy to condense yang qi and yin qi. Generally, yang qi and yin qi would disappear in the body after a short period of time and be assimilated by spiritual power. Unless he could condense a large amount of yang qi and yin qi in an instant, it would be impossible. The yin and yang qi produced by the water god technique and the fire god technique was a slow accumulation method. It was to help the cultivation of the yin-yang technique and was not good for condensing yang and yin qi. If he could swallow the pure yang energy, the yang qi would be denser, and maybe he could condense real yang qi. God Treasure Pavilion, Heavenly Thunder Bead. Qin Feng rubbed his chin and muttered, "Hey, beauties, can I sit here?" Suddenly, a young man in his early 20s came from not far away. He was quite handsome, but his peach blossom eyes, which were prettier than a woman's, made people uncomfortable, especially when he saw Ouyang Shi and the others. "Sorry, we have someone here," Ouyang Shi said coldly. She glanced at Qin Feng and secretly pouted. What she meant was that someone was interested in the beauties beside you, and you did not say anything. Qin Feng acted as if he did not see it, and continued to eat. Chapter 204. Jingwei Qin Feng raised his head and looked at him. This guy's appearance was not bad, especially his pair of peach blossom eyes, which were even more beautiful than a woman's. However, his gorgeous silks and satins, coupled with his extremely wretched temperament, made him look like a top-grade nouveau riche. Coupled with his hook-like eyes scanning Ouyang Shi, Zhao Qi, and Fan Miao Miao, was really disgusting. However, Qin Feng looked at the empty seats and nodded. This is not my house. Whoever wants to sit can sit. Brother is reliable, haha. The young man sat down, eating meat and drinking wine, as if he was an outsider. For Qin Feng to let such a person sit with them. Ouyang Shi and the other two were surprised. Even if they were ordinary friends, they should not let such a lecherous person sit with them. However, they were sitting here as if they were acquaintances, so they could not directly drive them away. Their cold eyes swept back and forth between Qin Feng and the young man. After being tormented by you for so long, it's time to let you suffer a little. Qin Feng sneered in his heart, ignoring the knife-like eyes of the three. The young man opposite them was even more shameless. The three women's faces made it so clear, but he still acted as if he did not know anything and happily tried to get close to them. He asked how old they were this year, who was in their family, and whether they were married. Fan Meow Meow pointed to the saint word on her shoulder and said in a bad mood, "Are you blind? Can't you see such a big word?" "Oh, Saint Riwin, I'm sorry." The young man opened his eyes wide, stretched out a greasy big hand, and said with a smile, "I was attracted by the shocking appearance of the three beauties. I really didn't notice." Fan Meow Meow coldly snorted and ignored him. The young man did not feel embarrassed. He stretched out his hand and directly picked up a chicken leg and gnawed. Seeing him act like a rogue to this extent, Ouyang Shi and the other two's good mood was ruined. How can this person be so shameless? Zhao Qi said. Qin Feng was quite interested in him, stared at him, and asked, "Brother, you are?" "Me." This good-looking but extremely wretched guy glanced left and right, his pair of lustful peach blossom eyes chasing after the three great beauties. After he finished stuffing the drumstick, he poured himself a glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. "I am a descendant of Ho-Yi, Jingwui." Qin Feng raised his eyebrows, but didn't say anything. He just looked at him with a smile. "What do you think, brother? Dedicated to the sun. This name sounds good, right?" Jingwui smacked his lips as if he was savoring the fragrance of the wine. Staring at Jingwui, Qin Feng nodded, smiled, and said nothing. The spiritual energy in his body unconsciously began to circulate faster. He narrowed his eyes. He didn't know why, but he actually sensed some dangerous fluctuation from this extremely wretched guy. Setting up the sun, was this some kind of hint or warning? The sun is high up in the sky, shining sunlight and bringing vitality to the earth. How can it be shot down so easily? Qin Feng said casually. The poisonous sun pours down poisonous and scorching rays that hurt people's skin. Not everyone is willing to bathe in this kind of sunlight. Jingwui gnawed on the duck leg again, his mouth full of grease. If the sun is shot down, there will be no light. After the darkness, there will always be light. The sun is too poisonous and can't be left alive. But how can you shoot it down? Shoot arrow by arrow. One day you will shoot it down. This requires perseverance and patience. Will anyone agree with the act of shooting the sun? Which person who has been burned by the sun doesn't agree? Many, all over the world. Ouyang Shi and the other two were simply angered to death. This Qin Feng's brain was clamped by the door. He actually talked about shooting the sun with this wretched guy. This person has a problem with his brain. Does he have a problem with his brain? After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Jingwui touched his round belly and still had a wretched smile on his face. Qin Feng was also smiling. Just as he was about to speak, Jingwui suddenly exclaimed and pointed not far away. "Brother, look, there's so many beauties." It's another eyesore-level beauty. Wow, my eyes are definitely going to be injured today. Qin Feng was surprised by his actions. He looked in the direction he was pointing and immediately had a headache. It was actually Flower Demon and the other two. But fortunately, the three didn't seem to notice him and were eating at the snack bar opposite. Eyesore level, eyesore level. Retracting his gaze, Qin Feng heard Jingwui's exclamation and asked, "What eyesore level?" "It's eyesore level beauty." A pair of peach blossom eyes stared straight at Flower Demon, Tang Ran, and Gong Xiaoxi. Jingwui pointed at the ordinary-looking women around and introduced, "In my eyes, beauties are divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels. Just like these people, they belong to the eyesore level. I don't have high requirements for the eyesore level." As long as the appearance is passable, the figure is passable, and can attract some attention. After the eyesore level, it's the eyesore level. The requirements for this kind of beauty are a bit high. After drinking a mouthful of wine, Jing Wui said seriously. But with his wretched appearance, it was really a bit out of place. The eyesore level beauty must be dignified and delicate. Even if she's not a lady from a big family, she must be a pretty girl from a small family. Moreover, her figure must be good, and she must be able to attract a lot of attention. As for the eyesore level beauty, the requirements are a bit harsh. Not only must she be devastatingly beautiful, but she must also have a graceful figure. She must have a 100% chance of attracting attention. Her eyesore will make people have the urge to push her down. Jing Wui pursed his lips and looked as wretched as possible. For example, the three beauties over there, and the ones beside us. Eyesore, 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 and eyesore are the most authoritative embodiments of beauty. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you about the eyesore level. Patting his head, Jing Wui said seriously, eyesore level beauties are rarely seen. They belong to the legendary fairies that don't exist in this world. Needless to say about the appearance and figure of such beauties, the most important thing is their temperament. Their unique temperament is the key. Sigh, after telling you so much, you probably won't understand how heaven-defying eyesore level beauties are. Waving his hand, Jing Wui had an expression that said, "You don't understand." He had no idea how wretched he looked. Countless black lines appeared on Qin Feng's forehead. This is the beauty ranking in your eyes? The most authoritative one? He didn't know what to say. Ouyang Shi and the other two were stunned. They were shocked by Jing Wui's words. There was someone more shameless than him in the world. They believed that if Jing Wui was ranked second, it meant that the first was already dead. Extremely shameless. The three of them said in their hearts. Ah, the best Lolita. Jing Wui suddenly said excitedly, his saliva flying everywhere as he said, "Do you see that? The eyesore level beauty is accompanied by the best Lolita. She looks like a jade carving, pink and tender. I really want to take a bite." Today is really an eye-opener. The eyesore level beauty and the best Lolita are both here. In the past, it would be a blessing from the heavens to be able to see one. Today, I saw two at once. It seems that the heavens are helping me. They are praising me, the person who developed the most authoritative ranking system in this area. The heavens are treating me well. Chapter 205. Jean Clanjean, and he looked at Flower Demon and the others, feeling curious. Who was the little girl beside them? He had never seen her before, and from the way the three of them looked at the little girl, it seemed like they had known each other for a long time. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure it out. Qin Feng looked at the three people, and then looked at Jing Wui, who was frozen like a statue, and said, "I know those three who hurt their eyes. They'll love to make friends." Jing Wui heard this, and his eyes lit up. "Brother, don't lie to me. You can go and say hello, then you'll know if I lied to you or not. Especially the one with the dark green earrings. She is the easiest to talk to. Look at how good she is to the little girl. You should know that the face is from the heart. The one with the eye pain level is obviously a gentle person." Jing Wui smacked his lips, got up, and walked over. Ouyang Shi and the others held back their laughter. Fan Miao Miao laughed. "Little cutie, you are really vicious. Not only did you let them tease the little demon, but you also let that bastard get beaten up." Qin Feng smiled, stood up, and said to the others, "Let's go back quickly. If they find out that we are the ones who ordered them, we can't avoid trouble." "We didn't order them," the three of them said at the same time. "I was the one who ordered them, so I will run away." After saying this, he did not wait for the three of them to say anything, and slipped into the crowd and disappeared. Hearing the screams of Flower Demon and Jing Wui behind him, Qin Feng shook his head and whispered softly, "Are you really like this? Or is your cheeky face just a way for you to hide yourself?" Qin Feng did not know what kind of person Jing Wui was, but he could see that Jing Wui's eyes were very pure when he looked at the beauties and did not have any selfish thoughts. Shooting the sun, Is the sun you want to shoot the same as the one I want to shoot? Qin Feng shook his head and smiled with his hands behind his back, then walked towards the god's treasure pavilion without stopping. The god treasure pavilion at night was even more crowded than during the day. It was brightly lit and people were coming and going. Qin Feng walked in. The lobby on the first floor was very big. The crystal cabinets were filled with all kinds of objects, dazzling the eyes. Qin Feng looked at the medicinal herbs, the various treasures, and the corresponding prices, and decisively shifted his gaze. There were already quite a few people in the hall. Judging from their attire, most of them were people of high status. There were people gathered in twos and threes, chatting and laughing. Some people were buying treasures and discussing prices. Qin Feng walked around in a circle, and his eyes were dazzled. He didn't find anything good, nor did he find any high-quality herbs. It wasn't that the God's Treasures Pavilion had an undeserved reputation. It was just that when it came to medicinal ingredients, he didn't lack them. Most importantly, he was no longer a country bumpkin who just came out of the city of sin. After all, he had stayed in St. Ruin for so long. He had strolled through the herb garden and snatched the flower demon's treasures. Ordinary things did not catch his eye. "My friend, you look a little familiar." As he was strolling, a cold voice came. Qin Feng frowned and looked over. His heart skipped a beat. Damn it, why did I run into the Jin clan? Qin Feng didn't expect that he would run into people from the Jin clan the first time he went out. As soon as he arrived, he secretly asked around about the Jin clan. It was a big clan with a strong background. The Jin clan was a big clan in the capital. They were very powerful, and half of them had royal blood. The Jin clan he killed was the second son of the clan, Jin Sheng. A few people walked over from afar. The leader was an extremely handsome young man. He wore a golden robe with the word Jin painted on his sleeve. Qin Feng recognized him right away. He was from the Jin clan. The young man's eyes were long and narrow. Occasionally, they would flash. He had a faint smile on his face, but it gave off a cold vibe. You don't come with good intentions. Qin Feng sighed and asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Jin Yan." The young man stared at Qin Feng and said in a cold voice, "I didn't expect that you would dare to come here." "Why can't I come here?" Qin Feng said coldly. He felt Jin Yan's hostility towards him. This made his heart tremble. Did the Jin clan know that he killed Jin Sheng? But no matter what, he couldn't show any disrespect. Jin Yan's appearance attracted a lot of attention. Looking at those respectful and envious eyes, it was obvious that Jin Yan was quite famous in the capital. "My brother had an accident while hunting the escaped slaves. Is this related to you?" Jin Yan asked directly. He didn't beat around the bush like Qin Feng expected. He directly stated his intention. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Qin Feng shook his head. He would never admit it. He was confident that he had done it discreetly and would not give himself away. He did not even take the treasure in Jin City, so it was impossible for him to leave any clues behind. Moreover, a rank 3 spirit beast happened to appear at that time. Many people died in it, and there was no lack of people with high status among them. This would be a good cover. Is that so? Hearing this, Jin Yan sneered. He stared at Qin Feng with burning eyes and said, "Our family has a special treasure that can send messages." Before Jin Sheng died, he used the bronze mirror to send an image. The person in the image was you. I think you should give the Jin clan an explanation. Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked. That treasure was so powerful that it could send an image. But it could also be Jin Yan who was trying to trick him. "I don't know what you're talking about." Although he was surprised, Qin Feng still said calmly. Seeing this, Jin Yan narrowed his eyes and stared at Qin Feng. Qin Feng stared at him. His expression was calm, like an ancient well without any ripples. "Don't you think you should explain?" Jin Yan said coldly, "We've already investigated. At that time, my brother was chasing a group of escaped slaves. There were witnesses who saw you among them. But in the end, my brother and his group all disappeared. Only you survived. Furthermore, your figure is in the image. Don't you think you should explain?" When the surrounding people heard this, they were all shocked. In their upper-class circle, there were already rumors that Jin Sheng didn't die during the Great Slave Conquest because of the beasts, but was assassinated. At that time, everyone had laughed it off. But now Jin Yan's actions seemed to prove that Jin Sheng's death really was fishy. But thinking about it, that didn't seem right. After all, there had been chaos. Powerful beasts had appeared, and some people with status no lower than Jin Sheng had died. Even the noble, the ninth princess, had been attacked. Furthermore, Jin Sheng himself wasn't weak. He had many experts by his side. The strongest of those escaped slaves was only at the late sea expansion realm. Adding on the fact that they had been trained from a young age, how could they have killed Jin Sheng's group? I really don't know what you're talking about. Who is your witness? Where is he? I, Qin Feng, can confront him face to face, said Jin Yin indifferently. He was sure Jin Yin was trying to trick him. Otherwise, if he really had conclusive evidence, he would have already captured him. The more conclusive Jin Yan's claim was, the less proof there was. He was just trying to trick him. Of course, they might have really found some clues that were related to him. Otherwise, Jin Yin wouldn't have immediately come to find him as soon as he had entered the city. Qin Feng guessed that the image sent by the copper mirror might be real. It might have recorded a certain scene of him killing Jin Sheng, but it was very blurry, and he couldn't see the exact appearance. Chapter 206. Refused to admit it at that time. There were indeed quite a few of us who banded together, but we were chased by some armies. As for whether those people from Jin City were there, I really don't know. We didn't fight with any army head-on. Moreover, there were many powerful spirit beasts that appeared at that time, and all of us were scattered. I and some others were lucky enough to survive, so I don't know what you're saying. Really? Hearing that, Jin Yin sneered. His eyes flickered as he asked in a low voice, "Then can you explain why there are corpses, or at least traces of the dead, but there are no traces of the people from Jin City? Even if they were killed by a powerful spirit beast, it's impossible that everyone was swallowed into its stomach. We've turned the place upside down. We can find the bodies of all the people on the death statistics list, or we can find them through the traces. Only my brother Jin Sheng and his group have no traces at all. It's as if they have evaporated into thin air. We can't find anything, and you're the only slaves who have come into contact with them." The surrounding people gradually looked a little strange. If what Jin Yin said was true, then this matter was really strange. The group of people from Jin City, including their servants and the army, had at least 100 people. Even if they were attacked by a powerful spirit beast, it was impossible that they could not find any traces of people. Everyone pondered for a moment and felt a chill in their hearts. There was only one explanation for such a situation. Someone had purposely erased all traces of the deaths of Jin Sheng and the rest. Moreover, what Jin Yin said shouldn't be false. As long as they investigated this matter, they would be able to find out if there were any traces of Jin Sheng and the others. Some people looked at Qin Feng, and their expressions changed. Who would purposely erase the news? Only those with a guilty conscience would do such a thing. Qin Feng was also having a headache at this time. If he had known that a third-rank spirit beast would appear there, and that chaos would ensue, he wouldn't have taken the trouble to move the corpses of those people from the Jin City up the mountain and destroy them. But no matter what, he had to bite the bullet and deny it. I really don't know about this situation. I only know that at that time, the ninth princess was attacked by a powerful spirit beast. If I hadn't saved her, I'm afraid that there would be no corpses left, including the wolf rider. As soon as Qin Feng's voice fell, the hall instantly exploded. Only now did they react. It was said that back then, the ninth princess was also in turmoil, but it was said that she was saved by a runaway slave. It was just that the imperial family didn't say anything about it, so no one knew whether it was true or not. But most people thought that it was unrealistic. How could the escaped slaves save the ninth princess? One had to know that the ninth princess was hunting the escaped slaves. They were always secret. SSS, not to know the royal families to the royal family. This kind of thing was kept a secret by the imperial family. Even in the imperial capital, it didn't cause much of a stir and was quickly suppressed. Therefore, even the people in the imperial capital didn't necessarily know about this matter. How could this Qin Feng know about this? The only explanation was that it was true. The ninth princess was saved by someone at that time, and that person was Qin Feng. Otherwise, she wouldn't know about it. A group of people looked at Qin Feng. Some frowned, some looked away. In the end, not everyone believed that it was true. However, Jin Yan's pupils suddenly shrank, and he clenched his fists. Others might not know, but how could the Jin clan not know? Moreover, he had a very good relationship with a prince of the royal family. He knew that the ninth princess was indeed saved by an escaped slave, but this matter was related to the royal family's reputation, so it wasn't announced to the public. But he knew that the royal family knew about the existence of the escaped slave, and they were grateful to him, especially the emperor of the imperial capital, who saved his favorite daughter. No matter what identity he had, he would reward him handsomely. That year, the emperor had issued a secret order. If the escaped slave was still alive and lucky enough to meet him, he would be rewarded handsomely. However, this matter was only spread in the upper-class circle, and no one else knew. He never thought that it was actually this person. This was a bit difficult. He already believed that Qin Feng was the escaped slave who saved the ninth princess, and this made his face slightly gloomy. If there was absolute evidence that Qin Feng was the murderer of his brother, then even if Qin Feng was the benefactor of the ninth princess, he wouldn't have a good ending. Because in the eyes of the royal family, the hierarchy was above everything. No matter the reason, no matter what the situation, no one was allowed to offend their superiors. This was a serious crime that could lead to the execution of 9 generations of the family. But he didn't have any evidence. Just as Qin Feng guessed, they only had a vague image. He saw Qin Feng just now and felt that they looked similar, so he deliberately tricked him. He didn't expect to trick him into a big bomb. However, from the conversation, he was 80% to 90% sure that it was Qin Feng who did it. Just as he was thinking of a reason to kill him, this matter suddenly appeared. Once this matter was spread and the royal family knew about it, the Jin clan would have no hope of revenge in this lifetime. From Jin Yan's expression, Qin Feng was even more certain that Jin Yan didn't have any evidence. Moreover, his identity as the benefactor of the ninth princess was starting to make Jin Yan afraid. He said, "I don't know what you're talking about. If you insist on an explanation, I can only say that your brother was very unlucky. He might have encountered more than one powerful spirit beast, and everyone was eaten. Of course, your Jin clan is a big family. If you insist on putting this crime on me, I can't do anything about it." Jin Yan's eyes were gloomy. He was unwilling to let Qin Feng go just like that. If I kill him before this matter is spread. A cold light flashed in Jin Yan's eyes. Before Qin Feng's identity was exposed, he could kill him for revenge. Even if Qin Feng's identity was exposed, he was already dead. The Saint Ryuin couldn't do anything about it, even if they wanted to pursue the matter. At most, the royal family would punish him for not figuring out the truth. In a moment of anger, they would punish him and show the Saint Ryuin. They wouldn't really make things difficult for the Jin clan. After all, the Jin clan wasn't an ordinary clan. It had a lot of weight in the royal family. The most important thing now is to confirm his crime before his identity is exposed. Thinking of this, Jin Yan said indifferently, "Your explanation is too far-fetched. If you don't believe me, I can't do anything about it." Qin Feng spread his hands, looking helpless. Since he was sure that they didn't have any evidence, he had to be tough and pretend that he was wronged. Anyway, he had made up his mind. As long as Jin Yan couldn't produce substantial evidence, he wouldn't admit it. "If you don't admit it, then come back to the Jin clan with me," Jin Yan said indifferently. "The image in the bronze mirror is in the Jin clan. You'll know whether it's you or not when you see it. This is my bottom line for not doing anything to you. Don't think that you can clear your name just because you don't admit it." Qin Feng tilted his head and looked at Jin Yan. He snorted inwardly. If he really went to the Jin clan, would he be able to come out alive? They would definitely act first and report later. Even if he had the title of the ninth princess benefactor, it would be useless. He shook his head and said, "I'm a student of the Saint Ryuin. If you want to take me to the Jin clan, should I tell the Saint Ryuin first?" Chapter 207. My friend, with the protection of Saint Ryuin, Jin Yin won't dare to do anything unless he has absolute proof, someone muttered. Nonsense. There's no evidence. Even if there is evidence, so what? As long as Qin Feng refuses to admit it. Plus he saved the ninth princess before. Plus Saint Ryuin came forward to protect him. The royal family shouldn't make things too difficult for him. If that's the case, the Jin clan can only suffer in silence this time. Saving the ninth princess? It's hard to say whether it's true or not. Whether it's true or not, Jin Yin can't do anything to Qin Feng today. The surrounding people spoke very softly, but they were still heard by Jin Yin. His face became even gloomier as he stared coldly at Qin Feng. He clenched his fists tightly and felt extremely angry. Just as they said, as long as Qin Feng refused to admit it, with the Saint Ruin around, it would be difficult for him to touch Qin Feng, unless he admitted it himself, and if others did not believe that he had saved the princess. Only when both were present could he make a move. However, this person should know that he didn't have absolute evidence. If he refused to admit it, there was nothing he could do. Qin Feng naturally heard the voices of those people. He immediately relaxed. As long as he didn't admit it, the Jin clan wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Io, why is it so lively here? Suddenly, a light laugh was heard. The crowd parted, and a young man in black walked in. Zhou Yan, everyone exclaimed softly. This Zhou Yan is also one of the 8 heavenly kings. Furthermore, he has a close relationship with Jin Yin. Could it be that he intends to stand up for Jin Yin this time? What's the use? Even if the 8 heavenly kings were all here, they wouldn't be able to do anything. After all, there's Saint Ruin and the title of the suspected savior of the ninth princess. Hearing the discussion, Qin Feng couldn't help but frown. Another person looking for trouble. Brother Jin, there is no need to be angry with a slave. Black will never be white. A toad is a toad. Even if he wears the expensive clothes of the Holy Dragon Institute, he will still be a toad. He will never be able to fly and become a dragon. Zhou Yin glanced at Qin Feng in a seemingly unintentional manner as he spoke in a faint voice. Pucci. Some people couldn't help but chuckle. They looked at Qin Feng with a mocking gaze. Yes, so what if you entered the Saint Ryuin? Getting rid of your slave status is only your unilateral opinion. In the end, you're just a slave. You're just wearing a layer of gorgeous clothing. Without the official slave release certificate from the imperial capital, you are a slave. This is not something you can hide by wearing a gorgeous coat. Qin Feng looked at Zhou Lian indifferently without saying a word. That's right. Where are the rules of God's treasure pavilion? How can any lowly person come in? Don't you need to check if the person has the financial ability to buy something, or if he has a treasure that can be bartered? Zhou Lian shouted. In the distance, a middle-aged man walked over with a bitter face. He had already seen the commotion here. However, on one side, there were the 8 heavenly kings. He couldn't afford to offend them. On the other side, there were people from Saint Ryuin. Most importantly, they were suspected to be the saviors of the ninth princess. He didn't dare to offend them. But no matter what, he was the manager here. Since no one stopped, he had to stand up. This little brother, please show me proof of your wealth or some mystical treasures. The middle-aged man smiled at Qin Feng. Everyone looked at him with contempt. He was just a slave. What good things could he have? As for his financial ability, there was no need to talk about it. He's just a student of Saint Ryuin. It doesn't mean that he can enjoy the same treatment as us. Someone sneered. They were born with a symbol of wealth and nobility. Wherever they went, they didn't need to show any proof. But those lowly slaves were different. No matter how cheap the things in God's treasure pavilion were, these slaves couldn't afford them. Everyone sneered, waiting to see Qin Feng make a fool of himself. No matter how capable he was, he could never change the fact that he was just a slave. Wherever he went, he would be despised. Qin Feng's expression was cold. He sighed in his heart. Sure enough, people from Saint Ryuin didn't have much weight in the eyes of the people in the imperial capital. In these people's hearts, they boasted that they were born to be superior. Even people from Saint Ryuin were just slaves in disguise. They didn't deserve to be on the same level as them. He didn't have any treasures or much money, but he had a lot of high-quality herbs. It was just that he was too lazy to deal with these people. Qin Feng glanced at the crowd and then turned to leave. Haha, sure enough, the nature of a slave can't be changed. No matter how well dressed you are, you can't change your lowly status. The group of people laughed. Jin Yin and Zhou Lian looked at each other. Cold light burst forth from their eyes. As long as Qin Feng left, they would take action. However, just as Qin Feng was about to leave, a cold voice suddenly came from a private room on the second floor. He is my friend. I want to see who dares to drive him away today. Hearing this arrogant voice, everyone was stunned at first. But in the next moment, everyone's smile froze. They knew who had spoken. Whoosh! Whoosh! Everyone turned their heads. Looking at a room on the second floor, the window was opened, revealing a small face that was so exquisite that it could cause the downfall of nations. The kind of beauty caused the hearts of many to sway. However, at this moment, that exquisite face was covered with frost. Especially the prestige that faintly leaked out, it caused people to unconsciously lower their heads, not daring to even breathe loudly. Jin Yin and Zhou Lian were also stunned. After a moment, their faces turned ugly. They didn't expect that she would come here. Since she was here, they knew that they couldn't touch Qin Feng today, no matter what. They might not even have the chance in the future. If they stayed, they would be the ones to lose face. The two of them didn't say a word and turned to leave. Qin Feng was also slightly stunned. Looking at that familiar yet strange face, how could he not know this person? She was the 9th princess that he saved from the mouth of a rank 3-spirit beast more than 2 years ago. However, the 9th princess at this moment was completely different from that day. The kind of dignified expression made even him not dare to speak loudly. As the saying goes, the path of the emperor is filled with millions of corpses. If this princess was angry, at least 100,000 corpses would be buried. At this moment, the 9th princess gave off such a feeling. No one dared to speak, let alone ridicule Qin Feng. Qin Feng, come over here. The 9th princess waved at Qin Feng. Seeing this, Qin Feng didn't stop. He turned around and walked up the stairs. So you're a friend of the 9th princess. I have been disrespectful. The middle-aged man hurriedly smiled apologetically. It's okay. Qin Feng shook his head lightly and ignored him. The group of people in the hall were dumbfounded. Looking at the 9th princess, there was no doubt about it. This guy was really the 9th princess's savior. Chapter 208. The 4th Prince Xuanyuan, all ignoring the changes in their expressions, Qin Feng went to the room on the 2nd floor. He was a little nervous at first, but when he saw the 9th princess's expression, he immediately felt that he was overthinking. This girl had returned to her playful state from the other day. He was shocked to find that beside the 9th princess sat a handsome young man in ordinary clothes. At this moment, the young man was looking at him with a faint smile. Qin Feng smiled politely at him. He knew that even though the young man was dressed in ordinary clothes, he was definitely a person of great status since he could sit beside the 9th princess. Moreover, from the fluctuations that were faintly emitted from his body, Qin Feng could sense that he was even stronger than Jin Yin and Zhou Lian. Qin Feng, come and sit here. The 9th princess gestured for Qin Feng to sit down and snorted proudly. Humph, you came in my territory and didn't look for me. You were even bullied. If this were to spread, wouldn't it be said that I, the 9th princess, do not know how to be grateful? Qin Feng smiled slightly and was a little reserved at this moment. This place was not like outside. In a public place, he still had to have the proper attitude. This is my 4th brother, Xuanyuan Owl. The 9th princess pointed to the young man beside her and introduced. I pay my respects to the 4th prince. Qin Feng hurriedly bowed. As expected, a prince's background was so great that it was terrifying. Brother Qin Feng, no need to be so polite. You saved Jing Jing, so we should be the ones thanking you. Xuanyuan Owl said with a smile. Hey, Qin Feng, how do you know that he is the 4th prince? The 9th princess asked in surprise. The two of them rolled their eyes at the same time, but Qin Feng quickly restrained himself and said, You are the 9th princess, and he is your 4th brother. Obviously, he is the fourth prince. He pretended that it was difficult to analyze so that the ninth princess would not find out that her intelligence had been insulted. After listening to Qin Feng's analysis, the ninth princess immediately reacted. She nodded and said, "Not bad. You have quite the analytical ability." Xinyuan Owl's face twitched when he heard this. He sat a little further away so that his IQ wouldn't be affected. Qin Feng smiled awkwardly. He didn't know how to compliment her IQ. Was this still the ninth princess of the imperial family? She was simply a retarded princess with a high IQ. By the way, Qin Feng, why did you follow the Saint Ryuan to the imperial capital? The ninth princess asked. Brother Qin Feng, you must be here for the king conferring ceremony, right? Xinyuan Owl smiled. You are qualified to represent the Saint Ryuan in the king conferring ceremony? The ninth princess was surprised and looked at Qin Feng in astonishment. To be qualified to participate in the king conferring ceremony, one had to be at least at the late stage of the Strongbone realm. Qin Feng was only at the early stage of the Sea Expansion realm at that time. Could it be that in just 2 years, he had advanced to such a level? Those who dare to become escaped slaves are all people with extraordinary talent. They don't want to be manipulated by fate. They want to use this opportunity to enter the Saint Ryuan and change their fate. Before, they were limited by the environment and resources, so their achievements were mediocre. But once they arrived at the Saint Ryuan, they were nurtured wholeheartedly, and their cultivation naturally improved by leaps and bounds. Because escaped slaves are all geniuses among geniuses. In fact, such people will also be put in an important position in the imperial capital. Xinyuan Owl smiled faintly. His tone was very light, and no one could hear any emotion from it. This deepened Qin Feng's impression of this person. He was astute and didn't easily reveal his emotions. Qin Feng, you can't participate, the ninth princess suddenly said. Qin Feng was surprised, then smiled and asked, why can't I participate? The ninth princess was speechless. It seemed that there was no rule that said Qin Feng couldn't participate. Xinyuan Owl chuckled and didn't say anything. Obviously, he already knew Qin Feng's identity in the Saint Ryuan, but he didn't say anything. He just whispered, Brother Qin Feng, those two people are quite strong among the younger generation in the imperial capital. His voice was very soft, as if he was talking to himself. It was a kind of evaluation, but also a kind of reminder and hint. Qin Feng nodded slightly. TCH, what's the use of being strong? Qin Feng is my savior. Who dares to touch him? The ninth princess said disdainfully. Moreover, she raised her snow-white chin at Qin Feng, as if asking Qin Feng to be grateful to her. It's my fortune to have the opportunity to meet the ninth princess. Qin Feng thanks you in advance. Qin Feng thanked her and satisfied her wish. No need. The ninth princess waved her snow-white little hand. She felt very happy. She felt a sense of accomplishment to be able to make a person who was so cold to her that his face was almost paralyzed. The fact that these two people can be ranked among the 8 heavenly kings is enough to show that they are strong, Xinyuan Owl said with a smile. 8 heavenly kings. Qin Feng was surprised. He had never heard of such a ranking. They're the 8 most powerful people among the younger generation in the imperial capital. Glancing at the two people, the ninth princess said, Jin Yin and Zhou Lian are 2 of them. Although I don't like their style, I have to admit that they are indeed strong. Who can become one of the 8 heavenly kings and compete for the 8 seats among thousands of geniuses? Who can be ordinary? Xinyuan Owl said with a smile. Hearing this, Qin Feng's expression became slightly serious. He did not expect that these 2 people would have such great influence in the imperial capital. Although Qin Feng had never heard of the 8 heavenly kings, he knew that the value of the heavenly king's seat was definitely not low. Originally, he only thought that these 2 people were from powerful families, but now it seemed that he had underestimated them. Seeing Qin Feng's expression, the ninth princess thought that he was afraid. She immediately smiled and said, But you don't have to worry. As long as you don't cause trouble, no one will dare to do anything to you. The identity of Saint Ryuan will be your protection. But in the imperial capital's coronation battle, it will most likely be your death warrant. Xianyuan Owl chuckled. Hey, fourth brother, why do you always disagree with me? The ninth princess was dissatisfied. She glared at Xianyuan Owl angrily. Every time she said something, Xianyuan Owl would always refute her. This made her lose face. She felt that Xianyuan Owl was doing it on purpose. Xianyuan Owl shook his head. Although he was talking to the ninth princess, he glanced at Qin Feng and said, I am telling the truth. Identity is a dead thing, but people are alive. Dead things can never stop the changes caused by people. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and secretly nodded. Not only were Jin Yin and Zhou Yin famous, they were also ranked as heavenly kings, and their families were also very important and had a lot of connections. On the surface, they naturally did not dare to touch him, but in the dark, it might be very troublesome. After all, Jin Yin had already determined that he was the murderer. There was no way he would let this go. Moreover, if Brother Qin Feng makes it to the top 8 and participates in the coronation battle, this protection will be your death warrant. Xianyuan Owl smiled faintly. Why is that? Qin Feng was confused and asked. The rules of the king conferring ceremony have been changed this time. In the king conferring ceremony, there is no limit to life and death. So, even if you're Jing Jing savior, you're not allowed to participate. If you are killed because you are not strong enough, no one will hold you accountable. All right, I almost forgot about that. The ninth princess reacted. Her beautiful face began to show some worry. Qin Feng, why don't you not participate? Hearing this, Qin Feng was shocked. He asked, why did the rules suddenly change? Chapter 209. I was tricked again. Qin Feng stared blankly for a moment, then nodded inwardly. He understood what Xianyuan Owl meant. The people of the imperial capital placed great importance on Heaven's Road. The reason they changed the rules this time was most likely because they wanted to eliminate the top students of St. Ryuin. However, he also had his own confidence. It would be very difficult for the younger generation to kill him, unless they were in the spirit detecting realm, but that was another arena. It was different from the Strongbone battlefield. However, he was very puzzled. As a prince, why would Xianyuan Owl remind him to kill them all? Wasn't that what the imperial capital wanted? Qin Feng could not understand Xianyuan Zhao's thoughts, nor could he understand them. But it is not necessarily impossible to participate. I think with the strength of Brother Qin Feng, it should not be difficult to enter the top 100 of the bone-strengthening list. Xianyuan Owl smiled and said in an inexplicable tone, Fourth brother. The ninth princess pouted. She had just advised Qin Feng not to participate in the competition, and now he was interfering again. His continuous pestering made her seem like she didn't know anything. Xianyuan Owl chuckled and spread out his hands, indicating that he would stop talking and continue to taste the wine. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed as he felt a little puzzled. Vaguely, he had a feeling that Xianyuan Owl was secretly warning him of all kinds of dangers, but sometimes he would downplay these dangers. Qin Feng was puzzled by this vague gesture. How shrewd, Qin Feng thought to himself. Xianyuan Owl's actions were definitely not as simple as reminding him out of kindness because he had saved the ninth princess, but he could not conclude that Xianyuan Owl had other motives. While they were chatting, the atmosphere in the lobby on the first floor gradually heated up, and there was a lot of noise. Some treasures are about to be revealed. Perhaps Brother Qin Feng will like them. Xianyuan Owl smiled mysteriously. Perhaps. Qin Feng also smiled and cast his gaze into the hall. In the middle of the room, there was a high platform. It was a huge crystal cabinet with several items on it. Even those who did not know much about treasures could tell that those items were not ordinary. There was a crimson dragon fruit that was as red as blood, a small cauldron that flickered with golden light, a drop of water that was filled with vapor, a stalk of grass that was surging with green light. Without a doubt, these were all good treasures that would be of great use to cultivators. But Qin Feng's eyes immediately focused on the leftmost side. There was a peachwood box there, and a deep blue pearl the size of a longan lay inside. There were blue patterns flashing on the surface, like lightning. Heavenly thunder bead. Qin Feng's heart stirred. He licked his lips, his eyes blazing. However, he didn't bid. Not a single one of those treasures was something he could afford. Let's hope it's won by a nobody. Qin Feng prayed in his heart, but he was soon disappointed. The heavenly thunder bead seemed to be very popular. Many people with high status were fighting for it. Looking at the obvious disappointment in Qin Feng's eyes, the ninth princess's big eyes flashed. She curled up the corner of her mouth, and an idea came to her mind. The ninth princess's big eyes kept rolling. Looking at the heavenly thunder bead in front of her, she suddenly said, "Heavenly thunder bead, 1,000,000. The noisy hall suddenly became quiet. Pairs of eyes looked to the second floor. Those who wanted to increase the price stopped immediately when they saw that it was the ninth princess who bid. No matter how much money they had, it was still not enough in front of the royal family that controlled the entire primitive land. The people of God's Treasure Pavilion were also surprised that the ninth princess would bid. But with good professionalism, they quickly recovered. After making sure that no one was going to increase the price, they immediately presented the heavenly thunder bead. The ninth princess threw the heavenly thunder bead on the table and looked at Qin Feng with a smile. "Thank you." Qin Feng smiled at her and reached out to take the heavenly thunder bead. "Hey, I didn't say it was for you." The ninth princess blocked him and looked at Qin Feng with a faint smile. Qin Feng's face stiffened. He did not expect that the ninth princess would suddenly make such a move. He did not know whether to retract his hand or extend it. It was a little awkward. Under such circumstances, he was always a little reserved when he met the ninth princess and the fourth prince of the royal family. But when he saw the teasing look in the ninth princess' eyes, he immediately understood. "I thought too much." Qin Feng retracted his hand and calmed down. Looking at Qin Feng's indifferent face, the ninth princess was surprised. "You don't want it?" "I want it, but it's not that urgent." "Maybe I thought too much." Qin Feng nodded, then shook his head and said, "This thing may be useful to me, but it may not be useful at all, so I don't have to get it." His words stunned the ninth princess. She asked subconsciously, "This thing is dispensable to you?" "You can say that. At least I won't pay more than I can get it." Qin Feng nodded and glanced at the ninth princess. He said, "The heavenly thunder bead is very powerful. I think it would be a good choice for you to use it for self-defense." "Tisish." The ninth princess rolled her eyes. "I don't need such a rude method. If you want it, I can give it to you. But you have to promise me one thing." Seeing Qin Feng's indifference, the ninth princess thought he was considering the gains and losses. She quickly said, "It's just that you have to promise me one thing. It's not that difficult." "I'm afraid." Qin Feng frowned and was silent for a while. He asked cautiously, "What is it?" "Well, I haven't thought about it yet. I'll tell you when I think about it. It's not too difficult." Afraid that Qin Feng would not agree, the ninth princess added, "You don't have the ability to do something too difficult. If that's the case, I can consider agreeing." After thinking for a while, Qin Feng said carefully, "Okay, deal. You can have the heavenly thunder bead." The ninth princess seemed to be relieved and said, "What is it?" "Think about it quickly. I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first." Qin Feng said. He picked up the mahogany box, stood up, and left like the wind. The ninth princess stared blankly at this scene. For a while, she did not come back to her senses. "Qin Feng, you big swindler, big swindler." Finally, she came back to her senses. She gritted her teeth and cursed in a low voice. No matter how stupid she was, she realized at this moment that Qin Feng treasured the heavenly thunder bead to death. He deliberately pretended not to care and wanted to get it at the lowest price. And he had fallen for it, falling right into the other party's trap. No one had ever dared to swindle her like this. The ninth princess was angry and amused. A very interesting person. Xianyuan Owl smiled faintly. He just likes to swindle people. The ninth princess curled her lips. Hearing the ninth princess tone, Xianyuan Owl frowned. He took a sip of wine and suddenly smiled mysteriously. "Jing Jing, your evaluation of him is not normal." The ninth princess' face froze. Her heart was inexplicably flustered. "No, fourth brother is talking nonsense." She spat softly, as if trying to suppress the fluster in her heart. She hurriedly stood up and left. Looking at the somewhat embarrassed the ninth princess, Xianyuan Owl narrowed his eyes and said, "Jing Jing, you are not the same kind of person as him. Don't have a relationship that you shouldn't have." The ninth princess' body froze. She said in a panic, "Fourth brother, what are you thinking?" "What can I think? It's best that you don't." Xianyuan Owl said softly, "Jing Jing, you are a princess of the imperial family. You should know that if you have an unclear relationship with a slave, the one who will be sacrificed in the end will definitely not be you." The ninth princess' body shook. She slowly turned her head. Her beautiful face had returned to indifference. She said softly, "Fourth brother, you are really thinking too much. I only have feelings for him out of gratitude. I have no other feelings." With that, the ninth princess turned and left. Looking at the small figure leaving, Xianyuan Owl's hands tightly clenched in his sleeves. Chapter 210. The mysterious little girl Qin Feng obtained the Heaven Thunder Bead and quickly slipped out of here. Of course, he did not go through the main door, as he was worried that he would be discovered. Instead, he jumped out of the window and ran away. Walking out of the Divine Treasure Pavilion, he purposely chose a place with fewer people. Walking in the complicated alleys, he released his soul energy and scanned the surroundings carefully. Not long after he came out, he sensed that someone was following him. Without knowing the other party's intentions, Qin Feng did not want to come into contact with them. He sped up, walked through some messy places, and finally shook them off. However, he also realized that he was lost. It was dark all around, and the roads were tangled and complicated. Moreover, this should be an abandoned slum. It was quiet all around. Occasionally, the barks of stray cats and dogs could be heard, which served as a foil to the silence of the night. Qin Feng walked carefully, following the directions in his memory, towards the inn booked by the Saint Ruin. Suddenly, he sensed a slight noise coming from not far away. He hesitated for a moment. Using the moonlight, he quickly jumped onto the roof and moved in that direction. Not far away, red light flickered and a low roar sounded. They gradually got closer. This was an open area, and a large number of houses had been pushed down. It was a ruin. Is that a red flame hound? Third-rank spirit beast. Qin Feng's eyes focused. In the ruins, two red lights were constantly jumping. From afar, they looked like burning flames. Their aura had actually reached rank 3, which was comparable to a bone-strengthening spirit beast. Someone is being chased. Qin Feng saw a thin figure running in front of the red flame hound. Under the moonlight, Qin Feng could barely make out the person's appearance. It was a 12 or 13-year-old girl. Her small face was tender and extremely cute. Her large eyes, which were like half a lake, were rippling with heart-wrenching panic. Why aren't there any spirit energy fluctuations? There's no sign of spiritual power either. Qin Feng was surprised. This little girl had obviously been chased by the Scarlet Flame Hound for a while, but there weren't any energy fluctuations around her body. How did she deal with a rank 3 spirit beast for so long? This was not realistic. Suddenly, one of the Scarlet Flame Hounds opened its mouth and shot out a beam of red light. The little girl seemed to have felt the scorching aura behind her and hurriedly turned around. She threw out a fist that was as tender as a baby. With a muffled sound, the beam of red light was shattered and the little girl's body staggered as the Scarlet Flame Hounds closed in on her. Qin Feng's. There was no spirit energy fluctuations around the little girl. There was no spirit beast hound. She could not be any spirit beast. She could not help herself. She was, as expected of the imperial capital. There are so many capable people. Qin Feng sighed. However, he soon felt puzzled. This little girl was so powerful at such a young age. She must belong to a major clan or a major power. How could she be hunted so easily? Hound red, red hound, 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 red, 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 red. Red, 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 red hound, hound, red. It red, red hound, hound, red, 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 red hound. Chin them? Red, hound, red, red by hound, wait a minute. But just as he was about to retreat, His eyes narrowed as he stared at the little girl. Why did he have a feeling of déjà vu? After a while, he finally remembered. Wasn't this the little girl who was with the flower demon, Tang Ran, and Gong Xiaoxi? He was in a dilemma. Should he save her or not? Just as he was thinking, the little girl also saw him, and an excited smile appeared on her face. Big brother, save me. But soon, the joy on her face dissipated bit by bit because the person on the roof did not seem to want to help her. Bad guy, the little girl pouted. Her big eyes were misty, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. She was innocent and did not understand why her big brother, who looked so comfortable, would not save her. But after thinking about it, he did not seem to have the obligation to save her, so she wiped her face and continued to dodge the two red flame hounds. Ah! The little girl suddenly exclaimed. Her mood was affected by Qin Feng. Her footsteps were messed up, and she stumbled forward. It was at this moment that the two red flame hounds swooped down with their ferocious mouths. Sigh. Qin Feng sighed. Since they knew the flower demon and the others, they must not be bad people. Then he would save them. As he swooped down, his mental energy spiraled out and shot towards the two red flame hounds. When he landed on the ground, the red flame hounds' heads were already pierced by the mental energy. Mental energy naturally suppressed spiritual beasts. Qin Feng came to the little girl and looked at her from above. At this moment, the little girl was in a sorry state. Her big, clear eyes stared at Qin Feng, and her eyelashes fluttered. She was quite cute. After a while, Qin Feng did not say anything and turned to leave. But before he could take a step, he was stopped by the little girl. He asked, "Is there anything else?" The little girl's big eyes contained a trace of timidity. She said weakly, "Uncle, I'm hungry." Qin Feng's face twitched. Before he saved her, she was his brother, but after he saved her, he became her uncle. He was not even 20 years old. Was he growing that fast? In the ruins, a bonfire rose. Qin Feng directly chopped off the red flame hound's legs and roasted them over the fire. Soon, a tempting fragrance wafted out. The little girl opened her big, clear eyes and stared at the oily thigh meat without blinking. She kept swallowing her saliva. As for the black-faced Qin Feng, she had long ignored him. "Uncle, the meat is cooked." Qin Feng's face darkened, and he didn't care. How old was he? He was already being called uncle. Even if he was a little too old, for the sake of saving his life, he should still politely call him big brother. "Uncle, the meat is really cooked." The little girl, who was staring at the barbecued meat, saw that there was no movement. She raised her head and looked at Qin Feng. "Uncle, the meat is cooked. Eat." Qin Feng replied unhappily and passed the barbecued meat to the little girl. "Thank you, uncle." The little girl smiled sweetly and took the barbecued meat. "Be careful, it's hot," Qin Feng reminded her. Then he asked, "What's your name?" The little girl raised her head and swallowed the barbecued meat in her mouth. Then she said, "I don't know. I don't have a name." Hearing this, Qin Feng was speechless. She looked so innocent, but she was so careful. He asked, "How old are you this year?" "I don't know. It's been many days." "What about your parents?" "I don't know. I've never seen them." "There should be someone you know, right?" "I don't know. I've never seen them." "Then where are you from? Where are you going?" "I don't know." A series of "I don't know" made Qin Feng's face darken. She must be fooling him. Even if she had lost her memory, it was impossible for her to not know anything. "Weren't you supposed to have a meal with a few sisters?" Qin Feng asked. "Don't you remember?" The little girl raised her head again. She thought for a while and said, "Yes, I remember. They are good sisters. They treated me to a meal. But later, I was disturbed by a big pervert and got separated from them." "You don't know them?" Qin Feng was surprised. "Yes." The little girl nodded. Chapter 211. The grand meeting begins, however, when he saw the little girl's unsatisfied expression. The next sentence almost made Qin Feng's vision go black. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. "Uncle, I'm not full yet. Can you help me roast another one? Didn't you eat with a few sisters before? How long has it been?" Qin Feng was speechless. Such a big piece of roast meat was enough for 2 people to eat, But this little girl not only ate it for one person, but also said that it was not enough. Most importantly, a few hours ago, she was still eating with Flower Demon and the others. I was disturbed by a big pervert. I'm not full. The little girl timidly said, Uncle, help me roast another one. You're the boss. What else could Qin Feng say? When the second thigh was eaten, the little girl patted her belly that was not bulging at all. She actually planned to go straight to sleep. How big was her heart? He looked at the little girl who was leaning against the stone, smacking her lips and talking in her sleep from time to time. Qin Feng frowned. Where did this little girl come from? No matter what he asked, she said that she did not know. It seemed that she was very wary, but she casually ate other people's food, and now she was sleeping here. Obviously, she was not a shrewd person. Qin Feng could not see through this little girl for a while. Her physical strength is very strong, but there are no fluctuations of spiritual power or spiritual power. Secretly using his spiritual power to explore the little girl, Qin Feng came to this conclusion. Of course, at this moment, the little girl was in an unconscious state. He could only find that she had no spiritual power and was not a spiritual power master. As for her physical strength, it was inferred from before. If he left her outside and she did not make a move, it was estimated that others would treat her as an ordinary person. Qin Feng was thinking, should he leave or bring her back? But now it seemed that the little girl and Gong Xiaoxi did not know each other. They just happened to meet. Because she was cute, the three people paid attention to her. Moreover, he was still in a dangerous situation. But he could not bear to leave her like this. Alas, you're on your own. In the end, Qin Feng still hardened his heart. He wasn't a kind person, and this little girl's background was definitely not ordinary. She was being targeted by some family in the imperial capital, so he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. However, just as he was about to sneak away, he suddenly sensed that several people were rapidly approaching this place. When he used his spiritual power to scan the area, his face turned cold. It was actually the people of the Jin clan. Damn it! Qin Feng cursed inwardly. He picked up the little girl and ran. Now that the Jin clan was involved, he couldn't just ignore it. What made him speechless was how big this little girl was. They were running for their lives, but she was still sleeping soundly. Qin Feng sighed and quickly left. The little girl was not a member of the Saint Ryu Inn, and she was being chased by the Jin clan. He could not bring her back to the Saint Ryu Inn. After all, this was an internal matter of the capital, and the Saint Ryu Inn could not interfere. In the end, Qin Feng decided that if he had a chance to see the ninth princess, he would give the little girl to her. Then he dug a hole in a remote corner and buried the little girl. After disguising himself, Qin Feng memorized the terrain and returned to the inn. He took out the heavenly thunder bead and ran the 100 calamity sky swallowing art. In an instant, the room was filled with lightning and electric arcs, but under the swallowing of the sky swallowing art, they quickly disappeared and did not attract the attention of others. A strong and pure yang energy flowed in his body, and after being refined by his spiritual power, it turned into a fist-sized, dazzling blue energy. Qin Feng was overjoyed. Staring at the dazzling blue yang energy in his sea of qi, he couldn't help but chuckle. He had finally succeeded in condensing yang energy. Now he only needed yin energy. In the past, when he absorbed other yang energy or yin energy, it was quickly assimilated by his spiritual power because the density was too low. But this time, the yang energy was very rich and large, so it was difficult for his spiritual power to assimilate it. After successfully condensing yang energy, the ordinary yang energy he condensed in the future and the yang energy from the fire god art could be injected into this ball of yang energy, making it constantly grow. He had succeeded in the first step of the yin-yang technique. As long as he found the coldest and most yin energy and condensed yin energy, he would be able to cultivate the yin-yang technique. At dawn, he came here. Fortunately, there were no changes. He lifted the wooden plank covered by the soil, carried the little girl out, and shook her awake. The little girl rubbed her big eyes sleepily. "I'm hungry, Uncle." "Little girl, you'll be called Big Flower Explosion from now on." This was the name Qin Feng racked his brain last night, and it was very suitable for her identity of strange strength. Big flower explosion? The little girl blinked and immediately danced with joy. Uncle, I have a name. Seeing the little girl's excitement, Qin Feng secretly shook his head. He exchanged some medicinal herbs for gold coins, then took her to a remote small restaurant and asked for a room. At the same time, under the strange gaze of the waiter, he ordered food for 10 people. Seeing big flower explosion wolfing down the food, Qin Feng warned, "If you don't want to be chased by dogs again, then stay in this room. I'll let you eat until you're full, understand?" Big flower explosion nodded. Her mouth was covered in grease. Big flower explosion, "I'll let you eat and live, but that's all I can do. If you don't listen and encounter danger again, then I really won't be able to do anything." Qin Feng reminded again, "Don't worry, uncle. As long as I can eat my fill every day, I'll do whatever you say. I promise I won't cause you any trouble." Hearing this, Qin Feng's heart inexplicably ached. As long as she could eat her fill, this request was really low. He didn't even dare to imagine what Big Flower Explosion had experienced before. To others, eating her fill every day was just a normal 3 meals a day. But for Big Flower Explosion, it was an extravagant hope, mysterious origin, and strange strength. Qin Feng really couldn't figure out Big Flower Explosion's situation, so he didn't think about it. In any case, he would just find an opportunity to give her to Xianyuan Jing. "I'll find time to come see you in the future. You have to be obedient and don't run around." After settling Big Flower Explosion, Qin Feng left. Today was the start of the king bestowal ceremony. Countless young geniuses would collide and create the most beautiful sparks. They would compete for the top 100 of the various rankings. The so-called rankings were the Sea Expansion rankings, the Bone Strengthening rankings, and the Spirit Linking rankings. For the sake of fairness, different rankings would be distributed differently. Sea Expansion experts would fight in the Sea Expansion battlefield to compete for rankings, and so on. Qin Feng and the others naturally had to participate in the Bone Strengthening rankings. During this time, they would encounter other experts among the slaves, as well as the youths of the imperial capital. On the streets, there were more and more people, and the clamor replaced the tranquility of the night. Qin Feng followed the Holy Dragon Institute's group to the imperial capital's large public square. At this time, the public square was filled with people. It was a black mass, and it was very noisy. There were several battle stages in the plaza, and each of them was dozens of meters wide. At the back of the plaza was a huge palace. In front of the palace were dozens of seats, with dozens of people sitting on them. They were the referees and various administrators. All the contestants had to go to the palace to have their names verified. This complicated process lasted an entire morning. Even the people from the St. Ryu Inn were no exception. Chapter 212. The Great Chaotic Battle. The King Bestowment Ceremony was divided into the martial competition and the literary competition. The martial competition was based on combat strength, while the literary competition was a test of other aspects. Just the martial competition on their side had already reached 10,000 people. It could be seen just how great the appeal of this king bestowment ceremony was. Of course, many of them were slaves. This was a chance to get rid of slavery. So naturally, there would be slaves who believed their strength to be extraordinary participating. The first round of the martial competition was a cruel selection. From these 10,000 people, the strongest 100 people on each ranking would be chosen to participate in the more intense competition for rankings. Of course, the spirit unlocking ranking was not included. There were too few people at this level, and they would only appear at the end. The selection process lasted for 3 days. During these 3 days, Qin Feng had experienced 7 or 8 battles. Without a doubt, he had entered the top 100 of the bone strengthening list. The St. Ryu Inn had over 30 people who had entered the top 100, while the imperial capital had over 50. The remaining 10 or so spots had been taken by other slaves. These slaves were all very strong. They had all used thunderous methods to defeat their opponents and obtained the top 100 spots on the bone-strengthening list. Here, they shone brilliantly. The St. Ryuin didn't participate in the sea expansion list, but the competition was also very intense. There are also quite a few slaves with astonishing strength who obtained good rankings. The imperial capital's Great Slave Conquest was held once every 20 years. It was to suppress the development of the slaves. This didn't mean that there were no young geniuses among the slaves. It was just that there were too few of them. During this time, the imperial capital was very lively. There were discussions everywhere. Most people paid attention to the St. Ryuin's performance. After all, the so-called king bestowment ceremony was actually a contest between the imperial capital and the St. Ryuin. Of course, the person that people talked about the most was Qin Feng. Not to mention his strength, he had easily entered the top 100 of the bone-strengthening list. Just the title of the benefactor of the ninth princess was enough to attract everyone's attention. Regarding this, the people from St. Ryuin were also very shocked. They never thought that Qin Feng would actually do such a thing. Ouyang Shi, Xiao Yun, Zhao Qi, Fan Miao Miao, and the others were even more dumbfounded when they heard the news. Back then, they had always been with Qin Feng. After they separated, Qin Feng had always been with Zhao, Qi, Fushimi, and the others. None of them knew that Qin Feng had saved the ninth princess. You wouldn't dare to impersonate someone like that, would you? Ouyang Shi asked. The others all looked at him, especially Xiao Yun, Su Qin, and the others who were with him. They all knew that Qin Feng loved to pretend to be someone else. Qin Feng smiled and didn't say anything. After chatting with these people for a while, he found an excuse and walked over alone. He came to Mo Xing's room. He was the direct person in charge of the Heavenly Palace. Other than their respective masters, the disciples of the Heavenly Palace were all under his management. Moreover, he was also one of the 3 representatives sent by the St. Ryuin. The purpose of Qin Feng coming here was very simple. He wanted him to send people to secretly send Ouyang Shi, Xiao Yun, Su Qin, and Long Zhan back to the St. Ryuin. In this battle of the top 100 of the bone-strengthening list, the imperial capital didn't send the 8 heavenly kings. Therefore, it wasn't difficult for the people of the St. Ryuin to advance. Those candidates were also not needed. Hearing Qin Feng's request, Mo Xing was startled and asked, "Why is that?" "Because I was the one who led them to kill a group of people from Jin City." Qin Feng didn't hide anything and directly said it. Mo Xing was shocked. After entering the imperial capital, he had heard a little about this matter. He didn't expect that not only was it true, but the instigator was also Qin Feng. After pausing for a while, he laughed loudly and patted Qin Feng's shoulder. He said with a smile, "Little guy, well done. After so many years, they still haven't found the culprit. This is too exciting." But soon after, he was shocked again and asked, "You sent them back. Is it Senior Mo is thinking too much? They only vaguely suspect me, but don't have any evidence. Moreover, I'm the benefactor of the ninth princess. Without absolute evidence, they won't dare to do anything to me." Speaking until here, Qin Feng shook his head and said, "But these people are different. If the Jin clan finds out that this matter is related to them, they will definitely make a move against them. I sent them back just in case." Mo Xing pondered for a while, then nodded and said, "Okay, I will secretly send people to send them back. Many thanks." Qin Feng thanked him gratefully. Just as he was about to leave, Mo Xing said, "Little guy, are you confident in this Heavenly King challenge?" "Heavenly King challenge?" Qin Feng looked at him in confusion. "This is an additional competition added by the imperial capital this time." Mo Xing shook his head and said, "Otherwise, why do you think the 8 heavenly kings didn't participate in the bone-strengthening list this time? Tomorrow, the bone ranking of the top 100 will have a great battle royale for the top 8 positions. And to enter the top 8, you will have to challenge the 8 heavenly kings of the imperial capital. That is the main reason why the imperial capital changed the rules of the king naming ceremony this time. Those who can enter the top 8 are definitely the strongest students of our St. Ryuin. but I'm afraid that they will fight back desperately to exhaust your strength or even seriously injure you. This way, it will be much easier for the 8 heavenly kings to act." Hearing this, Qin Feng was puzzled and asked, why didn't the imperial capital send the 8 heavenly kings down? Wouldn't it be easier for them to join forces to deal with us in the top 100 battle royale? Why do they have to complicate things and create a heavenly king challenge? And Mo Xing shook his head, a trace of darkness flashing in his eyes. It's too obvious to openly deal with the Saint Ryuin, and it will affect their fairness. But if they kill you in the Heavenly King Challenge, not only will they achieve their goal, but they can also use this opportunity to tell the world that the geniuses of our Saint Ryuin are far inferior to the youths of the imperial capital. So they deliberately set the rules. All the competitions before the Heavenly King Challenge are friendly sparring and are not allowed to kill. But the Heavenly King Challenge is not a matter of life and death. They are so confident that the 8 heavenly kings can kill us. Qin Feng sneered. Don't underestimate the 8 heavenly kings. The resources they have are not inferior to ours, or even better. I'm afraid that you Heavenly Palace disciples don't have a high chance of winning, and Mo Xing said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Qin Feng slightly clenched his fists. Even Mo Xing was so afraid of the 8 heavenly kings. From this, it could be seen how powerful these youths were. After 3 days of competition, the top 100 of the Strongbone list and Sea Expansion list had appeared. The battle for the Sea Expansion list had ended, and the slaves who entered the list would receive different rewards. As for whether they could be chosen by some powers to leave their slave status, it would depend on their luck. Before the top 8 battle royale began, Qin Feng received a letter. He opened it, and his eyes narrowed slightly. There were only 4 simple words on it. Don't enter the top 8. After a moment of silence, he shook his head, and a flame flickered at his fingertips, burning the paper. The most important thing today was the Strongbone List top 8 battle royale. This was also the most important thing for the imperial capital, because their original intention was to deal with the students of the Saint Ryuin who had the qualifications to wait for Heaven's Road. This was a huge battle royale, and there were no clear opponents. Everyone only had one belief, and that was to do their best to persevere until the end and enter the top 8. Chapter 2:13. The Great Battle the 4th day was undoubtedly an even more lively day. After 3 days of bitter battles, the top 100 contestants would undergo an even more intense battle today. Those who were able to enter the top 100 all had some tricks up their sleeves. This kind of battle was even more attractive because the real ranking competition was coming up next. Most importantly, this was the first real battle between the capital city and Saint Ryuin. Who was stronger and who was weaker would be revealed. The number of spectators around the battle exceeded the total number of spectators from the past few days. Countless people wanted to see the result here. Putting aside this, the battle royale between 100 strengthened bone stage experts was a rare and exciting event that could not be missed. Saint Ryuin's side and the capital city's side were clearly divided as they faced off against each other. The azure sky was cloudless for 10,000 miles. When the scorching sun rose high in the sky, a clear gong sound finally rang out in the square. Hearing the gong sound, only then did the noisy plaza become slightly quieter. Countless gazes followed the sound of the bell and looked towards the extremely spacious plaza. The atmosphere was instantly lifted. Clamor and cheers resounded through the clouds, deafening to the ears. Among them, Zhao Li, Wu Gang, Wu Yu, and Fan Yin are the strongest. Their reputation in the capital city is only weaker than the 8 heavenly kings. On the plaza, Mo Feng and the rest introduced a few people who were a threat to Qin Feng. Their mission is not to advance into the top 8, but to exhaust or even seriously injure us. Qin Feng nodded and looked over. There were clearly a few people there that were more eye-catching. One of them was dressed in white and had an elegant demeanor. His appearance was rather handsome. Beside him, there were a few people gathered. On the left, there was another faction. The leader was a burly young man with a body full of muscles, filled with explosive power. On the other side, there were also two factions. The leader was thin and small, with slender eyes that flickered with light when he blinked. The other was filled with yin qi. Although he was clearly a man, he gave off a feeling of yin qi. After their introductions, Qin Feng knew the identities of these people. The white-clothed man was called Zhao Li. The burly young man was called Wu Gang. The skinny one was called Wu Yu. The one with yin qi was called Fan Yin. These four were currently the young heaven's prides in the capital city, second only to the 8 heavenly kings. They were also the contestants who were most qualified to challenge for the heavenly king position. Just the fact that they were sent to stop the heaven's prides in St. Ryuin was enough to prove their strength. These people aren't weak at all. It's said that a few years ago, they had already reached the great circle of strengthened bones. Now, their strength must be even greater. What they displayed in the selection round might not be their full strength. Mo Feng's face was solemn as he said, "Furthermore, they should have already forged the strongest bones." Many people were envious of him when he first mastered it. But now, it seemed like it wasn't worth much. This is the capital. In terms of resources, it is likely that even the Holy Dragon Academy's foundation might not be able to compare with it. Since we're able to master it, it is not necessarily impossible for them to do the same. Otherwise, why would they be qualified to challenge the 8 great kings? Gong Xiaoxi shook her head. Her pretty face was somewhat grave as she spoke. They weren't afraid of the 4 people. They had 6 people on their side, not to mention their individual strength. But they were worried that they would be injured in this battle. The Heavenly Palace's 6 people were all candidates for the top 8. If any of them were injured, it would be dangerous in the king naming challenge. While they were sizing up their opponents, the 4 people looked over at the same time, with indifferent smiles on their faces. At this moment, the battle stage was quiet, but the atmosphere was a little strange. Obviously, it was obvious that there were 2 sides in this chaotic battle. One side was from the capital city, and the other side was from St. Ryuin. The 2 sides began to confront each other. Kill these slaves. Let them know the strength of the capital city's younger generation. Slaves will always be slaves. It's ridiculous to think that they can turn the tables. A group of slaves dares to challenge the young supreme talents of the capital city. They really don't know what they're talking about. Many people in the surroundings spoke out. They didn't try to hide it and shouted loudly. Many people echoed in agreement. Their words were not only harsh, but also full of disgust and ridicule. But no one stepped out to stop them. In their hearts, even if they were from St. Ryuin, they were still slaves. They couldn't be compared with their noble status. In the battle stage, the St. Ryuin people's faces were ugly and angry. Under such circumstances, it was too much to insult them in public. Ruthless words are the most pale and powerless thing in the world. Face is also not something given by others. If you feel that you have lost face, feel that you have been humiliated by others, then use the method that they can accept the most and ruthlessly give them a slap. Qin Feng's expression was indifferent. After experiencing a few years of being ridiculed as a waste, he didn't feel the slightest bit of emotion in his heart. Everyone nodded and suppressed the anger in their hearts. They coldly stared at the group of arrogant so-called young experts. Let's do it. This kind of confrontation and harsh words are too boring. Qin Feng took the lead. He turned into a flash of lightning and rushed towards the capital city's camp. Now it was obvious that the capital city's people had joined forces to hurt them as much as possible. No strategy would work. The only way was to throw these people off the stage. Crush them with absolute strength. Bang, bang. Qin Feng held the stone axe in his hand and was the first to rush in. The moment they came into contact, 2 people from the other side had already fallen. This also opened the curtains to the chaotic battle. The people from both sides were like 2 torrents that collided with each other under a roar of rage, erupting into the most brutal battle. 100 bone strengthening experts, and most of them were in the late stage, were fighting together. This scene stimulated the eyes of many people. Countless people shouted loudly, their faces flushed with excitement. Bang! After chopping down a person with his axe, Qin Feng took some time to look at the overall situation. Soon after, he frowned slightly. Zhao Li, Wu Gang, Wu Yu, and Fan Ying did not make a move. They were only coldly watching them. Obviously, they were conserving their strength. They wanted to defeat the so-called slaves in their peak state. Qin Feng sneered in his heart. He didn't pay attention to them and attacked like lightning. The number of people on both sides was about the same, but Qin Feng could see that in addition to the top forces, the capital city side had a certain advantage. Do they want to gather strength and launch a surprise attack while we are fighting? Looking at the four people, Qin Feng's eyes flashed. He and Gong Xiaoxi couldn't use the yin-yang fusion formation at this time. It was their biggest trump card. The 8 kings hadn't shown up yet, so they couldn't easily expose it. While he was thinking, the 4 powerful auras suddenly exploded. Immediately, several people from the St. Ryuin side were sent flying and fell off the stage. Chapter 214. To be wounded in just a short moment, more than 10 people were injured. And this was the power that they had used to attack Mo Feng, Qian Yin, Tang Ran, and the others. From this, one could see how powerful the 4 of them were. Boom! The 4 of them split up and then suddenly split into pairs to attack Flower Demon and Qin Feng. Qin Feng, who had been secretly guarding against them, narrowed his eyes. The 2 powerful auras caused all the hairs on his body to stand on end. This kind of attack was almost fatal. His mental energy gushed out crazily and rushed toward the 2 of them. Whoosh! Suddenly, a person's silhouette vanished, causing Qin Feng's skin to tighten as waves of pain spread out. Out of instinct, he moved half a step. At the same time, a sharp claw grabbed at his head, and a ferocious spirit light surged out. Narrowly avoiding this attack, Qin Feng turned around, swung the stone axe, and smashed it fiercely. Rumble! The sharp claws collided with the stone axe, causing a huge explosion in the air. Both of them staggered backwards. In the process of retreating, Qin Feng saw that the person who attacked him had a strange smile on his face, as if his plan had succeeded, causing his heart to sink. He turned his head with a swoosh, and his pupils abruptly shrunk to the size of a needle tip. Unknowingly, the person who had been affected by his spiritual power was less than 5 meters away from him. In front of the other person, a spiritual spear had condensed, bringing with it a frightening aura. God-slaying spear. That person did not give Qin Feng any time to react as the God-slaying spear shot towards him. Spirit barrier. Qin Feng did not have much time to defend against the attack at a distance of 5 meters. He could only desperately condense his spiritual power. Bang! In an instant, the spiritual barrier was shattered. Qin Feng pointed out with his finger. Finger light gathered at the tip of his finger. Then, he hit the tip of the God-slaying spear. A substantial shock wave spread out, and Qin Feng's body was sent flying. Before he landed on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. There wasn't enough time for him to condense his heaven-devouring finger. At this moment, he was heavily injured. Humph! At the same time, the flower demon was also sent flying. A muffled groan came from her throat. It was obvious that she was also injured. He had fallen into their trap, and his injuries were even more serious than Qin Feng's. Even if they were prepared, it was still not enough because they did not expect that they did not intend to fight to the death with the 6 of them and only wanted to severely injure 1 or 2 of them. Shua! Before Qin Feng could stabilize his body, Wu Yu, who had previously attacked Qin Feng, once again strangely appeared beside him. His palm turned into a claw, and as his spirit energy surged, it actually turned into a substantial giant claw of a spirit beast, grabbing at Qin Feng's head. Divine Dragon Sky, Collapsing Roar, Tyrant Dragon Claw. At the same time, Qin Feng used the Divine Dragon technique Sky, shattering Divine Dragon Roar and Tyrant Dragon Claw. Extremely penetrating sound waves spread out, causing the attack to pause. Then, Qin Feng punched out, and an illusory dragon claw appeared, colliding fiercely with the opponent's claw. Rumble! The air exploded, spiritual energy surged, and shockwaves spread out. The opponent was sent flying, and Qin Feng, who was already unstable, was sent flying again. The blood in his body was in turmoil, and he could not help but spit out another mouthful of blood. Come on, kill them. Even if the 8 heavenly kings don't appear, you Saint Ruin can't do it. Loud cheers erupted from the surroundings, and the people of the imperial capital were all excited, roaring loudly. From the Four People's attack to Qin Feng and Flower Demon's attack, it was only a flash of light, and Mo Feng and the others did not have time to rescue them. Because everyone was on the defensive, worried that they would be attacked, and did not expect them to have such a plan. When they reacted, they all moved out, protecting Qin Feng and Flower Demon behind them. Looking at Qin Feng, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, Mo Feng asked worriedly, "Are you all right?" Qin Feng waved his hand, suppressing the turmoil in his body. What a despicable method. Qianyan stood in front of the two, and his eyes were like lightning as he stared coldly at Fan Yin and Wu Yu, who had ambushed Qin Feng. A fierce spiritual energy rippled out from his body and directly set off a spiritual energy storm around him. Qin Feng and Flower Demon were ambushed and injured in front of them. This was not only a slap to their faces, but also a blow to Saint Ruin's reputation, and it would greatly affect the upcoming battle of bestowment. Feeling the fluctuations in Qianyan's body, Fan Yin and Wu Yu's expressions gradually became serious. "Wait," Qin Feng suddenly said, pointing at Wu Yu, and said, "Leave this person to me. Qin Feng, you and Flower Demon can't fight anymore. Leave the two of them in the top 8. Mo Feng said. Qin Feng slightly shook his head. Not to mention Saint Ruin's reputation, this person had injured him, and he couldn't take it lying down. Spirit Masters had always ambushed others, and when had they ever been ambushed, let alone taken advantage of? Whether it was for Saint Ruin's reputation or the anger in his heart, he had to personally take part in this battle. As soon as the battle started, 2 of us were injured, and the 8 heavenly kings didn't even make a move. This has already affected Saint Ruin's reputation." Qin Feng looked at the audience and said, "The way the slaves look at us has changed. We have to crush them with a complete victory." Looking at Mo Yin, who still wanted to say something, Qin Feng shook his head and said, "If Saint Ruin didn't care about their reputation, they wouldn't have sent all of us out at this juncture. You know, once the slaves lose confidence and respect for Saint Ruin, the Saint Ruin will be in danger." Hearing this, Mo Feng sighed. "You take care of your injuries. Leave those 2 to me and Qianyan." "Yeah, don't worry, we will avenge you." Qianyan also said, "You should avenge yourself." Qin Feng shook his head and stubbornly said, "I know my own body. I still want to challenge the 8 heavenly kings, so I can't stop now." After saying this, he ignored the 2 and directly rushed towards Wu Yu. Mo Feng faced Fan Yin, Gong Xiaoxi, and Tang Ran each faced Zhao Li and Wu Gang. As these 8 people's battle unfolded, the entire atmosphere was immediately pushed to the peak, and the noise shook the 9 heavens. The peak battle between the young experts was the biggest highlight, and it affected the hearts of countless people. Without a doubt, the top 8 would be decided between these 2 sides. If Saint Ruin lost, then the top 8 would all fall into the hands of the imperial capital. Otherwise, the top 8 would be occupied by the slaves. Zhao Li faced Tang Ran, Wu Gang faced Gong Xiaoxi, Qin Feng and Mo Feng each faced Wu Yu and Fan Yin, and Qianyan protected Flower Demon while attacking the other people from the imperial capital. This was because, excluding the top experts among them, Saint Ruin's overall strength was indeed weaker than the imperial capital. They needed an expert to hold the fort. Fortunately, Flower Demon's injuries weren't too serious. She joined forces with Qianyan to suppress the people from the imperial capital and slowly began to drive them away. That Qin Feng can still fight, hee. At this time, someone noticed Qin Feng and Wu Yu's battle and immediately sneered. Obviously, because of the title of the 9th Princess Benefactor, Qin Feng was a well-known celebrity in the imperial capital. Chapter 215. Out of the top 8 in this regard, many people hoped that Qin Feng would be crushed by Wu Yu. After all, he had only been in the Sky Hall for a short period of time. He was not as famous as Tang Ke, Mo Feng, and Tang Ran in the imperial capital. Many people did not know about him before his identity was exposed. Just like how the Saint Ryuan understood the young prodigies of the capital also understood the top students of the Saint Ryuan. Everyone knew that Qin Feng was not very important. He did have the strength to enter the top 100 of the bone strengthening list, but in many people's eyes, there was still a gap between him and the top young masters. The Saint Ryuan had concealed the secret of the yin-yang fusion formation very well and had only spread it within the academy. Rumble. The two of them clashed and retreated a certain distance. Not bad. Wu Yu laughed softly. Because someone had warned him beforehand, he had attacked Qin Feng, who was not famous among the top students of Saint Ryuan. However, he did not expect that Qin Feng would be able to escape. It's not bad for you to have persisted to this point. Wu Yu leisurely walked over, his expression calm. He laughed lowly. But someone has bid for your spirit energy. So I'm sorry. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed that his guess was not wrong. Jin Yin had indeed done something. He wanted to use the competition to cripple him, deliberately setting up a deceptive formation. Qin Feng's calmness caused Wu Yu to be slightly taken aback. However, he soon chuckled coldly. No matter what the other party was up to, he had the ability to kill the other party, let alone cripple him. Wu Yu's slow footsteps suddenly sped up, and in a flash, he disappeared from where he stood. In the next instant, he appeared right before Qin Feng. A palm filled with tyrannical spiritual energy pressure heavily slammed towards Qin Feng. Qin Feng's expression remained calm as he stretched out his palm and slowly pushed it out. It seemed slow, but when his palm and Wu Yu's palm collided, an extremely tyrannical spiritual energy fluctuation spread out. Bang! Almost at the instant when the two palms touched, Wu Yu's expression suddenly changed. The palm wind attacked, and both of them retreated a few steps at the same time. Qin Feng waved his hand and dispelled the force that had invaded his body. Then, he stared at Wu Yu with an indifferent gaze. Wu Yu's body shook for a moment. Similarly, the force within his body was dispersed. Wu Yu's somewhat mocking expression was slowly withdrawn as a grave expression gradually climbed onto his face. Previously, when the two of them had launched a sneak attack, Qin Feng could not react in time and could not put up a strong defense. Naturally, Wu Yu's attacks had succeeded. This made Wu Yu think that Qin Feng's strength was ordinary, similar to the investigation done by the imperial capital. Although Qin Feng was a Sky Palace disciple, there was still a gap between him and the others. However, after this head-on confrontation, he was stunned. This Qin Feng's strength was not the slightest bit weaker than those people. Boom, boom, boom. As the number of exchanges increased, the more Wu Yu fought, the more alarmed he became. This guy was simply a human-shaped violent bear, his strength terrifying to a shocking degree. He was clearly injured, yet he was still so ferocious. Wu Yu, what are you doing? On the other side of the battlefield, Fan Yin's extremely dissatisfied voice sounded. Because under Mo Feng's sharp attacks, he was gradually losing. He hoped that Wu Yu would quickly finish off Qin Feng and come over to help him. Boom! Because of Fan Yin's shout, Wu Yu was distracted and was hit in the chest by Qin Feng. He vomited blood and retreated. His eyes were extremely dark. Ignoring Fan Yin, Wu Yu's spiritual energy surged as he madly rushed towards Qin Feng. In terms of spiritual energy density, he was much stronger than Qin Feng. Although they were both at the complete late stage of the bone strengthening stage, the amount of spiritual energy density was different due to the difference in time. Moreover, under the condition that Qin Feng was injured, he gradually gained the upper hand. Vaguely, there were signs of suppression. Seeing the situation here, Mo Feng's face slightly changed. Just as he was about to come over to help, he heard Qin Feng shout, "Don't come over. I can handle it." Oof. I want to see how long you can last. Coldly snorting in his heart, Wu Yu attacked again, a powerful spiritual energy surging out. This time, Qin Feng did not put up any defense. He closed his eyes slightly and opened his spiritual energy to the maximum. An invisible energy continued to spread in the air from time to time. There would be a few obscure fluctuations that would quickly disappear. In terms of spiritual energy competition, he was injured and did not have the advantage, but he still had spiritual energy. It's over. Wu Yu's cold voice came from the front, but his figure strangely appeared behind Qin Feng. His palm turned into a claw, carrying a fierce energy as if it was tearing the air. Great splitting claw. Crack. However, the moment Wu Yu's hand touched Qin Feng's back, a fierce spiritual energy exploded around Qin Feng's body, forming a ripple that spread out. Wu Yu's figure paused. However, it was not over yet. A spiritual energy hand suddenly slapped down from above, and that power caused Wu Yu's face to change. Spiritual energy? He was so shocked that he actually forgot about this. When the two of them launched a surprise attack, it was his spiritual energy that neutralized most of it. At this moment, it was too late to dodge. Wu Yu used all his strength, spiritual energy crazily surging out, and the great splitting claw struck upwards. Following a violent explosion, Wu Yu's body shook, but he finally blocked the spiritual energy hand. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, his face changed again. He saw Qin Feng suddenly turn around, his body turning half a circle. Borrowing the force of the rotation, his calf mixed with a fierce wind, fiercely swung towards Wu Yu's chest, whose face had changed drastically. Heavenly Dragon Tail Whip. On his calf, the wind wreaked havoc, as if a heavenly dragon's tail had appeared, the oppressive air constantly exploding. Bang! The fierce force poured down, and Wu Yu, who could not form an effective defense in his haste, was unable to form an effective defense. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, his body close to the ground, and flew backwards, sliding on the ground for more than 10 meters before coming to a stop. Poochie! Another mouthful of blood was spat out, and Wu Yu's face instantly paled. His breathing was chaotic, and it was obvious that he was severely injured. Forcefully suppressing the surging blood in his body, Wu Yu raised his head, but was shocked to see Qin Feng shooting towards him. Me. He hurriedly raised a hand, wanting to admit defeat. However, before the words could come out of his mouth, Qin Feng turned into a flash of black lightning and appeared in front of Wu Yu, whose face had changed drastically, like a ghost. His finger madly pointed at Wu Yu's body. Golden Zen finger. Poochie. Suddenly, Wu Yu flew backwards, spitting out blood. Huh? Qin Feng growled, and the spiritual energy in those important acupuncture points suddenly exploded, blowing up Wu Yu's meridians and crippling his cultivation. Wu Yu was shocked and angry. He was the one who wanted to cripple him, but in the end, he was the one who was crippled. He was so embarrassed that he spat out another mouthful of blood, flew off the stage, and fell unconscious. There was silence outside the stage, and everyone fell into a daze. From the time Wu Yu had the absolute advantage to the time he was blasted off the stage, it was only 1 or 2 breaths of time. Many people had not yet reacted. Wu Yu, who clearly had the upper hand, was defeated just like that, and it was a crushing defeat. But one thing was certain: Wu Yu, who was qualified to challenge the 8 heavenly kings, was defeated miserably by a slave. Only at this moment did they realize that this person was really strong. Being able to defeat Wu Yu in an injured state showed how terrifying his true strength was. After crippling Wu Yu, Qin Feng charged towards Fanyin. Although the people from St. Ryuan were stronger than them, their real crisis was in the king naming challenge, and they could not afford any accidents at this time. He and the flower demon were already like this, and the others could not have any accidents. Under his fierce attack, Fanyin was quickly defeated. The two of them charged toward the other two. Without a doubt, they immediately admitted defeat. They were already at a disadvantage. So how could they fight 1 against 2? At this point, the imperial capital had shown a one-sided defeat, and it was not long before they were all swept out. The top 8 positions were all taken by the people from St. Ryuin. Many people in the imperial capital could not accept this kind of inoculation. Their young masters were actually defeated, and the sense of superiority they had in front of the slaves was gone. Chapter 2:16. Banquet. The martial competition of the king-conferring ceremony had reached the end, and the real climax was about to arrive. Among the thousands of contestants on the bone-strengthening list, the strongest 8 would be selected after fierce competition. These 8 people would be qualified to challenge the heavenly king throne that countless young people yearned for. That was a symbol of the supreme throne of the young people. In the past, it was the people from the imperial capital who challenged the heavenly king throne, but this time, the challengers were all from the St. Ryuin, which undoubtedly added a lot of excitement. The heavenly king throne was supreme. Even if they were slaves, as long as they succeeded in the challenge, they could replace the original master and become the role model of the younger generation. Not only could they get rid of the slave status, but their status would also rise. However, those who could be ranked as heavenly king throne were not weak. They had gone through many bloody battles and defeated many young geniuses. Those who stood out from the crowd all had the strength to convince people. Therefore, very few people could succeed in the challenge. It was not that no one had succeeded in the past, but it was too difficult. Those who succeeded were all amazing geniuses and eventually became the top figures of the empire. Of course, this also aroused the anger of many young people in the imperial capital who did not know the truth. They could not accept that the imperial capital did not have a single one of the top 8 contestants. It wasn't just the young people who were stirred up. In the end, even some of the older generation experts and important figures were dissatisfied. The news spread openly that the young people of the imperial capital hadn't made it into the top 8. This was a humiliation, and they demanded that the young heavenly kings not hold back and use their full strength to crush the challengers with thunderous force. They wanted to regain the face they had lost in the competition for the top 8. However, this was not good news for the Holy Dragon Institute at all. The Holy Dragon Institute suffered a crushing defeat on purpose in order to arouse the public's indignation. It was a convincing excuse for the Holy Dragon Institute to kill the Holy Dragon Institute brutally in this competition. The 8 heavenly kings were ordered by the higher-ups. One could imagine how tragic the final king-conferring challenge would be. At the same time, it would also attract more attention. Because this time, it could be said that the battle between the St. Ryuin and the young heavenly kings of the imperial capital was enough to attract the attention of everyone in the primitive land. After the top 8 contestants were decided, everyone got a short break. The king-conferring challenge would be held in 3 days. In order to entertain the contestants from all over the world, the imperial family would hold a grand banquet. Mo Feng, Qian Yin, Tang Ran, and the others had to adjust their condition, so they did not attend. Qin Feng did not intend to go, but the 9th princess sent a letter to him, telling him that she had something to discuss with him. At night, Qin Feng brought big popcorn to the imperial palace. This was a manner that was elegant and unique. There was a small bridge over flowing water, and there were artificial mountains and stone pavilions. In the jade pond, there were all kinds of small fish swimming around. The entire courtyard was filled with a tranquil beauty. However, on this night, this place was exceptionally lively. There were many figures, and from time to time, there would be delicate and pretty maids walking around with various types of snacks. There were also guards in armor patrolling. Qin Feng and Lin Fan arrived at the main hall. The decorations here were very luxurious and gorgeous. All kinds of furniture were made of high-quality sandalwood. Huge crystal lamps hung from the ceiling, blooming with brilliance, illuminating the entire hall. At this time, the main hall was extremely lively. There were quite a few people walking around, chatting with each other. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Qin Feng's arrival attracted a few people's attention. After all, he was still able to defeat Wu Yu despite being injured. His strength was clearly extraordinary. Adding on the fact that he was the savior of the 9th princess, it was hard not to attract attention. Of course, Most of these gazes did not have good intentions. There were also some people looking at Zhao Li, Wu Gang, and Fan Yin with questioning gazes. The three of them had ugly expressions. Everyone had been looking forward to them expelling all the slaves so that the top 8 spots would all fall into the hands of the imperial capital. Who would have thought that they would all be defeated? Without the 8 heavenly kings' help, there was no way they could have won. Furthermore, this was the will of the higher-ups, and they could not say anything. As for those gazes, Qin Feng completely ignored them. He found a relatively secluded place to drink good wine and taste good food. As for Big Popcorn, he also ignored everyone and began to binge eat. The main hall was large enough to accommodate several hundred people without feeling crowded. More and more people came to the main hall. Many of them were the young disciples of various large influences and great family clans. They could be considered to have some weight in the imperial capital. Moreover, there were many slaves present. Their names were on the sea expansion list and bone strengthening list. In the center of the main hall, there were several small circles that were the most lively. There were many young people gathered around them. Among them, the one that attracted the most attention was the one in the center. Qin Feng recognized one of them. It was the 9th princess. She was like a moon surrounded by stars. Many young elites were trying to squeeze their way in, hoping to speak a few words with the 9th princess. On the other side was an extremely beautiful young girl. She was around 20 years of age, and she was full of life. She was surrounded by many people, but her temperament was cold and her interest waned. She didn't have much interest in talking, but even so, many people still gathered around her. No matter the time, beautiful women were the most popular. Especially this kind of temperament and status. They were even more popular. Qin Feng wanted to go over and ask the 9th princess why she was looking for him. Then, he would shove the big popcorn to her and quickly leave. No one liked to stay in this kind of situation where they had to look at other people's faces. But when he saw those people, he dispelled that idea. He didn't want to be called a freeloader. He thought that since the 9th princess had called him here, she would naturally take the initiative to look for him. But looking at her appearance, she didn't seem to plan on coming. However, just as he was feeling a little impatient, a somewhat icy voice was suddenly heard. "You're that Qin Feng? The one who crippled Wu Yu and saved Little Nine's life?" A group of people walked over from the distance. The one leading them was a young man in golden robes. He was around 23 or 24 years old. He was handsome and confident, and his entire body emitted a noble aura. Without a doubt, such a person would be the center of attention wherever he went. But what made Qin Feng uncomfortable was that the other party's eyes were cold and gloomy, as well as a trace of disgust. "I am. What's the matter?" he said calmly. "I'm the 7th prince of the imperial capital." The 7th prince, Xianyuan Mao, opened his mouth. He didn't deliberately reveal his identity. He spoke very naturally and calmly. There was no deliberate teasing in his tone. "Oh," Qin Feng replied calmly. The 7th prince frowned slightly at Qin Feng's calm reaction, but he was very well-mannered, and the displeasure in his eyes only flashed for a moment. He smiled and said, "You're a very interesting person. If it weren't for some matters, I would like to make friends with you. But..." Chapter 217. Prince's oppression. A prince, especially one of the 8 princes with a lot of authority, would naturally be the focus of attention no matter where he went. The moment he appeared, he undoubtedly attracted the attention of many people. However, when they discovered that the 7th prince was actually walking towards Qin Feng, they all laughed in schadenfreude. They all knew that the 7th prince, Xianyuan Mao, had a good relationship with Jin Yan, and there were some signs that the death of the Jin clan's 2nd prince, Jin Cheng, seemed to be related to this Qin Feng. Because of the Saint Ryuan and the fact that he was the savior of the 9th princess, the Jin clan didn't dare to do anything to him. Now that the 7th prince had bumped into him, it was obvious that he wanted to intervene in this matter. Everyone understood the meaning behind the 7th prince's question. Many people looked at Qin Feng with complacent expressions. Those protective umbrellas of yours didn't have much of a deterrent effect on the members of the royal family. Although the 7th prince couldn't punish him, There was no harm in teaching him a lesson. I don't like to owe people favors the most. The seventh prince looked at Qin Feng with a smile that was not a smile and added this sentence. Qin Feng shrugged and said indifferently, "Sorry, I don't have the ability to help the seventh prince." Hearing this, the seventh prince's smile faded slightly as he stared at Qin Feng indifferently. When everyone saw this, they were secretly delighted. This guy was really using a chicken feather as an arrow. He dared to speak to the seventh prince like this. Wasn't he courting death? Even if he knew that the seventh prince was purposely making things difficult for him, he should have rejected him tactfully instead of being so cold. It's a good thing for young people to have drive, but they should also know how to act according to their capabilities. The seventh prince narrowed his eyes and said in an indifferent tone. Seeing this, Qin Feng frowned slightly. After a moment of silence, he said, "What do you want me to do?" Hearing this, the seventh prince's expression softened a little. He said, "I heard that you and Jin Yin are not on good terms. How about this? You apologize to him and ask for his forgiveness. This way, I can consider it as returning a favor to him." When he heard the seventh prince's casual tone, Qin Feng sneered in his heart. Soon after, he shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it." "What?" The seventh prince narrowed his eyes, revealing a dignified and cold expression. When the surrounding people saw this, they secretly cheered and gloated. At first, they thought that Qin Feng had given in and there was no good show to watch. Who would have thought that this guy would do such a thing? It was simply a slap to the seventh prince's face. "I said I don't owe him anything. I don't need an apology," Qin Feng said indifferently. The seventh prince stared at him, his eyes cold. After a moment, he shook his head and suddenly laughed, as if mocking himself. "There is actually someone who dares to speak to me like this. Is my identity as a prince not enough? It's been a long time since someone dared to talk to me like that, and the other party is a slave." The seventh prince shook his head and looked at Qin Feng, his face returning to indifference. "You should know that by speaking to me like this, you have already offended the dignity of the imperial family. I can punish you for your crime. Don't think that just because you are a student of the Saint Ryuin, you can do whatever you want." As soon as his voice fell, the seventh prince's body suddenly emitted a golden light. An extremely powerful spiritual energy filled the air. The surrounding wind blew, and some tables and chairs were sent flying. Many people hurriedly retreated. The seventh prince wants to disregard his identity and make a move here? Qin Feng frowned. "I just refuse to apologize to someone who doesn't owe him anything. This is acting recklessly? Is it me who is using my identity as a student of the Saint Ryuin, or is it the seventh prince who is using your identity as a prince to oppress others? You owe others a favor, so why should I pay it back? Also, I want to remind you that I will be participating in the king naming competition in 3 days. If I am injured by you before then, may I ask who will bear the loss?" The seventh prince was very powerful and had a very high status. If there was no other choice, Qin Feng didn't want to offend him. However, the seventh prince was too aggressive, so it was difficult for him to comply. "If you say this to others, they might be afraid. But to me, haha." The seventh prince chuckled and stretched out his hand. Suddenly, an endless amount of spiritual energy turned into a large golden hand. It carried a tyrannical pressure and grabbed at Qin Feng. The seventh prince's attack was very sudden, and the speed of the hand was very fast. Qin Feng didn't have time to dodge and was caught. The seventh prince is indeed unfathomable. The surrounding people hurriedly praised. Of course, some of them were true. Qin Feng didn't enter the top 8 by luck, but by true strength. However, he was suppressed by the seventh prince in one move. From this, it could be seen that the seventh prince's strength was not something that those geniuses could compare to. The royal family was a supreme existence in the imperial capital. All the clans and forces respected them. Therefore, the princes didn't participate in the king-naming competition. However, the people believed that the 8 princes of the royal family were definitely powerful. They might not be weaker than the 8 kings. After all, in terms of resources, cultivation techniques, and battle skills, No force or clan could compare to the royal family. With such a foundation, even the ordinary princes would be able to achieve something that some of the young geniuses couldn't compare to. Hearing the compliments, the seventh prince's face revealed a smug look. He stared at Qin Feng indifferently and said mockingly, "Do you really think that you have the right to talk to me after entering the top 8? That's right. He's just a slave who entered the top 8 by luck. Does he really think that he is invincible?" In front of the seventh prince, he is still suppressed obediently. The surrounding people were full of ridicule. Hearing the mocking voices, Qin Feng's expression was calm. However, his heart was in turmoil. Why did the seventh prince's golden hand feel so familiar? 5 Elements Art's Gold God Art. Qin Feng's heart was in turmoil. He couldn't believe that the seventh prince had used the Gold God Art. He was all too familiar with the power contained in the golden hand. It was the same as the power of water and fire. This was the power of gold. The power of water and fire that Qin Feng had just surged dissipated immediately. This art was too mysterious. If he could discover it, the seventh prince who cultivated the Gold God Art would definitely be able to discover it too. If the seventh prince knew that he had the Water God Art and Fire God Art, who knew what would happen? The 100 Calamity, Sky, Devouring art slowly circulated. The devouring power spread out and absorbed the power of gold that had invaded his body bit by bit. This was an ability that was derived from the 100 Calamity, Sky, Devouring art. Even without suppressing the prey, it could still devour it. It was just that the speed was much slower. The seventh prince's expression was indifferent and proud. However, his expression soon changed. At the same time, the entire hall was slightly shaken as they looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. The large golden hand around his body, which had imprisoned him and rendered him unable to move, was actually fading little by little in front of everyone's eyes. Within a short span of a dozen breaths, a third of the golden energy had disappeared. What's going on? This was the question that popped up in everyone's mind. The seventh prince's attack was so easily neutralized by Qin Feng. At this moment, the seventh prince's expression was slightly stunned as this thought popped up in his mind. He knew his own strength very well. However, in his perception, the energy of the golden hand had indeed strangely disappeared. It wasn't forcibly removed. "Seems like you have some interesting things on you." The seventh prince licked his lips. Deep in his eyes, there was a hint of desire. "Tell me, and I won't make things difficult for you today." The seventh prince sent a spiritual message to Qin Feng. Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the seventh prince's eyes, he seemed to have discovered the 100 Calamity Sky devouring art in his body. He suppressed the thought in his heart, and his face turned slightly gloomy. "Then I'll have to take it myself." The seventh prince walked over, no longer concealing his aura. However, just as he was about to take action, a faint voice suddenly rang out. Chapter 218. The terror of the heavenly king. The sudden voice caused everyone to be slightly stunned. Soon after, their expressions changed as they turned their heads in unison to look at the person who had spoken. The crowd parted and a young man walked out. He was also dressed in a golden robe and had a dignified look on his face. Under this dignified look, there was a deep sense of calmness and restraint. "Fourth prince," someone in the crowd exclaimed in a low voice. Clearly, they did not understand why the fourth prince had stopped them. But in the blink of an eye, he understood that the fourth prince and the ninth princess were born from the same mother, so they were naturally closer. Moreover, Qin Feng had saved the ninth princess's life before, so it was indeed inappropriate for him to stand by and do nothing when his sister's savior was bullied. "Fourth brother, are you going to meddle in other people's business?" The seventh prince looked displeased as he said indifferently. Although there were 8 princes in the imperial family, there were also branches. Some were direct descendants, while others were collateral descendants. Furthermore, the struggle for power in the imperial family was no secret. For the supreme throne, the princes would also fight with each other. They would form cliques and secretly fight against each other. Therefore, not all princes were on good terms. The fourth prince, Xianyuan Ao, and the seventh prince, Xianyuan Mao, were in opposing camps and had often fought against each other. If it was any other time, Xianyuan Ao would not meddle in other people's business. However, the one being bullied was Qin Feng. Therefore, Xianyuan Ao could not pretend that he did not see anything. Furthermore, his sister was watching. Seventh brother, he is Jing's savior after all. If you bully him like this, won't it damage the dignity of the imperial family? Xianyuan Ao said indifferently. He was disrespectful to me. Why can't I teach him a lesson? The seventh prince, Xianyuan Mao, retorted. Seeing this, Xianyuan Ao's face gradually darkened. His eyes were deep and surging with light. He said indifferently, Imperial Father said that if he can survive the coronation battle, there will be a great reward. Now that you are bullying him, are you not even putting Imperial Father in your eyes? I'm just teaching a disrespectful slave a lesson. I don't dare to wear fourth brother's hat of disobeying Imperial Father. The seventh prince shook his head. Father's words are very clear. He's going to participate in the coronation battle. Even if he dies, it's because he's not strong enough. Before that, nobody can touch him. Xianyuan Ao could not help but chuckle when he saw that the seventh prince was unwilling to give up. His tone carried a hint of mockery as he said, If seventh prince thinks that there is nothing wrong with this, then why don't we meet Royal Father directly and let Royal Father make a decision? The seventh prince's face froze and his eyes narrowed. No one knew what he was thinking. Seventh brother, Father wants to reward him heavily for saving me. If seventh brother still wants to attack him, then ninth sister can only report Father. At this moment, the ninth princess walked over and spoke in a soft voice. The seventh prince's mouth twitched. His gaze was gloomy, but he did not say anything in the end and turned to leave. He could not give face to Xianyuan Ao because they were opposing each other. However, the ninth princess was different. She was his royal father's only daughter, and he doted on her even more than his 8 older brothers. If the ninth princess really did say something to his royal father, then it would not be good for him. To be able to hold some weight in the coronation battle, the seventh prince naturally had his own wits. He knew when to stop and when to stop. Those who wanted to see Qin Feng embarrass themselves felt a bit regretful when they saw this scene. But at the same time, they reminded themselves that the ninth princess and the fourth prince were both protecting him. They could not easily offend him in the future. What a troublemaker. He causes trouble wherever he goes. Come with me. The ninth princess rolled her eyes at Qin Feng. Qin Feng bitterly smiled. How could this be blamed on him? Some of the people who wanted to surround them left under the good intentions of the ninth princess. They stared at Qin Feng with envy and jealousy from afar. What exactly do you want to say to me by calling me here? Qin Feng went straight to the point. Hey, everyone wants to surround me. Why are you avoiding me like I'm a plague? The ninth princess glared at him with her big, watery eyes. She was very angry at Qin Feng's behavior of wanting to stay far away from her. To me, you're the plague. Qin Feng thought. If she did not call him here, this would not have happened. Fine, I won't talk nonsense with you. The ninth princess glared at him and said, Qin Feng, I already asked someone to send you a letter. Don't enter the top 8. Why didn't you listen? Qin Feng inwardly shook his head. Wasn't this caused by your imperial capital? However, he was too lazy to argue with her. He said, I'm a student of the Saint Ruin. Naturally, I have to do my best for the Saint Ruin. Is the way you repay the Saint Ruin by getting beaten to death? The ninth princess stared at him and said unhappily. Qin Feng shook his head slightly and chuckled. Seeing that he did not care, the ninth princess could not help but get angry. She said, Did you hear me? I'm seriously talking to you. I heard you. I will also seriously consider it. Qin Feng spread his hands and acted as if he had been wronged. Why do you make me angry every time I'm with you? The ninth princess stared at Qin Feng angrily. All the people she had met in the past were respectful and bowing to her. It was not an exaggeration to say that as long as she said a word, countless people would listen to her no matter what. She had never seen someone like Qin Feng. He was like a hard and smelly stone in a latrine pit. However, she was still worried about him. Sometimes, the ninth princess hated herself for being like this. Brother Qin Feng, you can think about Jing Jing's words carefully, Xin Yuan Al said with a smile. What? The 8 heavenly kings are so powerful. Qin Feng could ignore Xin Yuan Jing's words, but Xin Yuan Al could not. He could not see through this person. You can say that. Xin Yuan Al nodded faintly. To be able to stand out among so many prodigies, they are naturally capable. Their strength may be beyond your estimation. Of course, if Brother Qin Feng is confident, you can also fight. Then, he suddenly changed the topic. Since ancient times, there have been people who have successfully defeated a heavenly king and replaced him. There are also people, and they are not invincible. Qin Feng was silent. Xin Yuan Al's words were always two-sided. He never made a decision, but more of a reminder and enticement. Fourth brother, why are you? The ninth princess rolled her eyes at him and said to Qin Feng, you can't participate in the king-naming challenge. Although I was surprised that you could enter the top 8, the 8 heavenly kings are terrifying. Moreover, Jin Yin and Zhou Yin are also among them. I think if you participate, they will deliberately target you, and if that happens, your life may be in danger. There are no rules in the king-naming challenge. Even if they kill you, they won't be punished, the ninth princess reminded with a serious expression. Qin Feng was silent for a while and suddenly asked, how strong are they? What the Saint Ryuin found was probably what they could leak. It might not be everything, just like how the imperial capital did not know how terrifying he and Gong Xiaoxi were together. On the surface, the weakest one defeated Wu Gang in 10 moves more than a year ago. Hearing that, Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. Even he might not be able to defeat Wu Gang in 10 moves. The weakest of the 8 heavenly kings was already so strong, his expression became serious. It seemed that the Saint Ryuin's evaluation of the 8 heavenly kings was a little too low. Chapter 219. Giving away the big flower after Xin Yuan Owl and the ninth princess reminder, Qin Feng knew that he had been careless. He had underestimated the 8 heavenly kings. Originally, he had thought that these people were only at the great circle of the bone-strengthening realm and had forged the strongest bones. But he hadn't expected that the weakest among them could easily defeat Wu Gang, who had also forged the strongest bones. The bone-strengthening realm was too special, especially the Great Circle. Those with good talent would need several years to reach the Spirit Link realm. In the Great Circle, time was especially important. It wasn't something talent could solve. The longer the time, the deeper the Spirit Link realm would be, and the more the body's potential would be stimulated. These 8 heavenly kings had all forged the strongest bones. Moreover, they had been cultivating for several years. It was unknown just how strong they had become. Although the current young heavenly geniuses, like Zhao Li and Wu Yu, their fame might only be a bit weaker than the 8 heavenly kings. They all think that they have the strength to challenge the heavenly kings. But in reality, it's just a way for them to encourage themselves to cultivate. If they really had to fight the heavenly kings, they would most likely lose. The ninth princess said in a low voice, "You defeated Wu Yu. That is indeed surprising, but that doesn't mean you can challenge the 8 heavenly kings. What do you think of my 7th brother's strength?" The ninth princess suddenly asked. Qin Feng was startled. Then he nodded. "He's very strong. I'm afraid he's about to reach the Spirit Link realm." This was the truth. Because of a short exchange just now, Qin Feng could vaguely sense the blood qi hibernating in the 7th prince's body. It was vast and unfathomable. Even if he went all out, it would be very difficult for him to be his opponent. Although he was confident, he was never conceited. He knew that there was still a gap between him and the 7th prince. That's right. The 9th princess nodded. 7th brother's strength should be on par with the 8 heavenly kings. Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. No words could compare to this. He looked at Xin Yuan Owl. Seeing Qin Feng looking over, Xin Yuan Owl smiled. He pondered for a moment and said, "Jingjing doesn't understand old 7's strength, but old seven strength should be similar to theirs. After that, he suddenly said something out of the blue. The 8 princes have never fought with anyone outside. Hearing this, Qin Feng fell silent. Xianyuan Owl's words were always ambiguous, making it difficult for people to understand. The 9th princess did not understand, but it should be possible that he had never truly fought. These words covered too much of the 7th prince's strength, so it was impossible to deduce anything. He's able to reveal any kind of information, but no one can get any information. The 4th prince is truly unfathomable. Qin Feng thought to himself. The 9th princess saw that he was deep in thought and did not say anything. She had already said it so clearly. If Qin Feng was smart, he should know what to do. Thank you for the reminder. I will be careful when the time comes. Qin Feng smiled faintly. The trace of fear in his eyes disappeared. Although the 8 heavenly kings were powerful, the heavenly palace disciples of the Saint Ruin were not pushovers either. No matter what, he had to try. Retreating in fear of a strong enemy was not something he would do. Seeing him like this, the 9th princess could not help but feel a little angry. Why was this person so stubborn? Not wanting to discuss this matter with him anymore, Qin Feng said to the 9th princess, "Can you do me a favor?" "What favor?" the 9th princess asked unhappily. Qin Feng smiled and waved at Exploding Flower. However, she glanced at him and ignored him. She continued to eat. Qin Feng's face twitched. He walked over and carried her over. "Uncle, what are you doing? I'm not full yet." Exploding Flower's little face was full of unhappiness. Whose child is this? Why is she so cute? She's almost as cute as me. When the 9th princess saw Exploding Flower, she was immediately overjoyed. She hugged her and rubbed her legs, causing Exploding Flower to cry out. Seeing that the 9th princess liked Exploding Flower so much, Qin Feng was also relieved. He said, "I accidentally met her 2 days ago. Her relatives were all killed by local ruffians. I couldn't bear it and saved her. However, I can't stay here forever, so I want to ask the 9th princess to accept her. Don't worry about this. I will definitely take good care of her." The 9th princess's stomach full of depression because of Qin Feng was now gone. She nodded in agreement. Xianyuan Owl looked at Exploding Flower, whose little face was full of unwillingness but could only submit because the 9th princess threatened her with food. His eyes flashed as if he had seen something, but he didn't say anything. "Exploding Flower, from now on, you will follow Her Highness the 9th princess. You will eat your fill every day. No one will bully you and no evil dogs will chase you. She's called Exploding Flower." "What kind of name is that?" The 9th princess had a look of disdain. Exploding Flower's lake-like, pure eyes blinked. She looked at Qin Feng and said, "You don't want Exploding Flower anymore. It's not that I don't want it. It's just that you will have a better life if you follow Her Highness the 9th princess." Qin Feng touched Exploding Flower's goat horn braids. He suddenly felt a little reluctant to part with Exploding Flower, who he hadn't properly interacted with. However, he knew that she couldn't follow him. Only by staying by the 9th princess side would she be safest. Be obedient. Don't be naughty. After giving a few more instructions, Qin Feng turned around and left. "Brother Qin Feng," Xianyuan Owl suddenly called out to him. Qin Feng turned around in confusion and looked at Xianyuan Owl. No matter what the result of the conferred king battle is, after it ends, Brother Qin Feng should leave the imperial capital as soon as possible. I've said it before, rules are dead and people are alive. How can dead things resist the control of people? After saying this, Xianyuan Owl vaguely glanced in the 7th prince's direction. Qin Feng followed his gaze and his heart trembled. He instantly understood and then nodded slightly. After leaving the main hall, the slightly cold air hit him in the face, causing his somewhat swollen head to sober up. "The 8 heavenly kings," Qin Feng murmured. Then he chuckled and left. Walking on the cobblestone path, Qin Feng thought about how to deal with the conferred king battle. Unknowingly, he walked to the back garden. Suddenly, his heart trembled and he looked around vigilantly. Suddenly, his gaze focused. Under the willow tree, amidst the myriad of flowers, there was a beautiful figure standing there. Under the moonlight and the myriad of flowers, there was actually a kind of soul-stirring beauty. Although he couldn't see the face of the figure's owner, from her temperament, he could imagine that she must be a peerless beauty. Qin Feng wanted to leave, but at this moment, the figure slowly turned around and looked at him. Although Qin Feng was prepared, he was still stunned by the ethereal beauty. It was a kind of otherworldly beauty, as if she was an angel who had fallen into the mortal world. She was also like a snow lotus at the peak of a snowy mountain, proud and lonely. People couldn't help but feel that she could only be seen from afar and not touched. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.